First pitch to De La Cruz. He hits a fly ball, right center. Yastrzemski has it! And Blake Snell has pitched the first no-hitter of his brilliant career here in Cincinnati. And all the Giants are going to come together and celebrate. He did it! He got that!
Well, that was the great Dave Fleming on the call last night on NBC Sports Bay Area. Not just the first no-hitter, the first complete game, the first shutout. I believe the first time Blake Snell's ever gone into the ninth inning. And also, Sam Lubman, first win of the season for Blake Snell. What a performance last night in Cincinnati.
Yeah, hello there. What a great way to get your first win. You can't rely on the offense, can't rely on the bullpen. He kind of went full Thanos. Fine, I'll do it myself. So You love to see it. And, oh, man, you talk about great moments that this team needed this year to really, fire the team up, fire this fan base up after what was, I think, a very frustrating week for Giants fans. That 5-1 homestand notwithstanding. Getting something like that last night was absolutely needed for this team. Just a great time and super fun to watch Blake Snell kind of hit that level last night.
Yeah, no doubt. Look, it was the best regular season performance of his career, and I'm sure for someone that had been in a position, not in some time, but the first thing that I thought of, Sam, just kind of watching that game and reading about what Blake Snell was doing, I had a chance to fully catch up on the performance, kind of dig into the details, which we will across Saturdays on the game with Evan Giddings and Sam Lubman from 9 to noon, is his World Series performance against the Los Angeles Dodgers when he was a member of the Tampa Bay Rays and had a no-hitter, I believe, going through 7 innings and got taken out. And didn't have a chance to finish out what potentially could have been a no-hitter due to either the analytics or the pitch count. I'm not sure. I don't remember who the manager was for the Rays.
That was Kevin Cash, right?
Kevin Cash, yeah. So, that was the first place my mind went to of he's at 85. All right, he's at 95 pitches. All right, he's up there. Bomel's letting him go.
He's quite
he's at 110.
An interesting conundrum that was developing for the Giants here. Do you let him try and go for it, or do you stick to the pitch count? And
you absolutely let him go for it.
Exactly. And I think they asked Bob Melvin after the game, and it was I think he had the same conversation with Blake Snell last night that he had with Logan Webb on Wednesday, and that there probably was not much of a conversation that was had. So no props to Bomel for going a little old school there and just letting his guy get it done. And I'm sure it's going to be one of those things where as soon as he gave up a hit that he was going to come out. But the way Blake Snell was dealing, I can't imagine that was ever really in Bomel's thought last night.
No, and look, it's a 3-0 shutout. The Giants have now shut out back-to-back opponents. They have not allowed a run in the last 2 games. And it's really on the backs of their 2 horses. Mm-hmm. And since they didn't make much of a move position player-wise at the deadline outside of relieving themselves of Jorge Soler, this is what they're going to have to do. Now, not quite literally throw no-hitters every single game, not throw shutout performances every single game.
Would help, though.
But it certainly would. Yeah, giving up no runs is a good start. But
it's a bold strategy, Con. We'll see how it works for them.
They're going to need their horses to carry them. And specifically these 2 guys that pitched in these previous 2 games, Logan Webb and Blake Snell. These are the only 2 guys right now on this team that have had legitimate, experience deep into these kind of seasons where you're trying to make a postseason run. The only reason I wouldn't put Robbie Ray in there yet is just because he's still coming back from Tommy John surgery. So I don't expect him to just be all, up to 100 and plus pitches immediately. But Snell and Webb, what we've seen the last 2 games, the Giants are in desperate need of those kinds of tone-setting performances.
Absolutely. And that was, I think that's a great way to put it. That was a tone that was set these last 2 nights, really. And now all eyes on to Kyle Harrison to get the Giants back to 500, which, Evan, I don't know if you noticed, it's been kind of a struggle for the Giants to get back to 500. This is going to be the 13th time that the Giants are going to come into a game or come into a game where they are 1 game below 500. In the previous 12 games, they are 2-10 with a chance to get back to 500. It is one of the weirdest things I've ever seen from a baseball team ever. One of those wins was Game 2 of the season. They started 0-1 against San Diego, come back and win Game 2 to improve to 1-1. The other win was during that week where they were in Pittsburgh and New York.
Yeah,
and the high point of the season probably up until maybe right now. So You always like to think that when one pitcher pitches well, it's kind of motivates the next guy. Well, now I got to match that. Well, Kyle Harrison, you gotta match a shutout, and then you got to match a no-hitter today. So no pressure for you there, kid.
No, but hey, I mean, you just look up, and the Giants have won 6 of 7.
A very quiet 6 of 7.
They've won 7 of 9. And I know 4 of those were against the Colorado Rockies. The Cincinnati Reds are not necessarily world beaters, neither the Oakland Athletics, although they have been lately, especially in the month of July.
That lineup is full of Bob.
Just beat the Dodgers last night.
I was tweeting back and forth with Spadoni. He's like, man, this A's lineup, they can really mash. I'm like, oh, he's got to call them the Mash Bros now. So that's where we're at with the A's.
That's not too bad.
Yeah.
We'll have to do some work on that. But like the A's are kind of the opposite of the Giants, where the A's cannot pitch and the Giants cannot hit.
If you put the A's lineup and the Giants pitching rotation together, you would probably have a World Series contender.
That's incredible.
Which is a wild thing to say, but you have the best pitching rotation in baseball like the Giants do.
But really, what we see, and we can get to that in a moment. But really, what we've seen the past 2 days, and also we're going to discuss this with Dave Fleming, by the way, voice of the Giants, television last night, also on radio, and works for NBC Sports Bay Area, 95.7 The Game favorite here. Hops on with you guys all the time. He's going to join us via the River Islands guest line at 10 o'clock. So Dave Fleming is going to join us. He was on the call last night for Blake Snell's no-hitter, 18th in franchise history, first no-hitter for Blake Snell in his career, and just an all-around dominant performance. But where I want to kind of start today, Sam, and for the listeners out there as well, 888-957-9570, does the last 2 days and the performances from Logan Webb and Blake Snell give you any sort of confidence? And I don't want to go to the best rotation in baseball just yet, because I think that before we get there, we do need to understand that this combination, this duo, was heralded as, at the beginning of the season, the best 1-2 punch in baseball. And it's because of days like the last 2, or games like the last 2, where Logan Webb, the Cy Young runner-up, 2, Blake Snell, the Cy Young winner. That's why you go and pair these two together. These past 2 games are an illustration and a realization of what the Giants had in mind when they inked Blake Snell to paper. When they brought him in, they envisioned a 1-2 punch that is better than almost any in baseball, and those 2 guys have shown it the last 2 nights.
No, definitely. You're starting to see that vision come together, and I think one of the bigger frustrations I had with this Giants team to start the year was that there was a lot of kind of hoping that things would work out according to plan when, having Snell come in late like he did kind of set the Giants behind the 8 ball a little bit. And that plan was not working at all to start the season, not just with the poor performances from Snell, but the injuries too. And I think a lot of Giants fans, myself included, that frustration was just like, you had this great idea, but it wasn't coming together. And it was just like 6 years in, we're kind of doing this, hope and a prayer type thing. Can Blake Snell have a great year despite having, an abbreviated spring training? And it bit the Giants for the first, 3-4 months of the season. And that was kind of the motivation that Farhan had in not making any big moves at the deadline, was that it all kind of came together literally right before the trade deadline. This is the healthiest this team has been all year, excluding, some guys who are out for the year like Jung-Hoo Lee. But this is also the most complete the rotation's been. I mean, for the first time, like they traded Alex Cobb away, Evan, because they had too many starting pitchers. Like in the span of a week, we saw his team go from, 2 starting pitchers and a bunch of bullpen games to, oh my God, now we have too many starting pitchers. It was just, it's all kind of came together so suddenly for the Giants. And you kind of hope, I think you kind of wish it came together maybe a few weeks earlier. Just they could have had a bit more of a run into that deadline. But here they are right now. This is the team they have. It's Operation Trust in the pitching staff. Operation, hey, young guys, you got to carry the way. And the young guys, obviously the attention's going to be on Blake Snell today, rightfully so. He did throw that no-hitter, struck out 11, walked 3. But, this team's success will be built on the young guys. And the young guys, they were contributing last night. Tyler Fitzgerald goes 3 for 5. He hits a home run. Casey Schmidt, he put one out into Buster Posey territory early in the second inning there. Also had a heads-up double play there while I was leaving the 7th inning. Mm-hmm. So, the pitching, the young guys, they carried it last night. That's going to be the formula for the Giants going forward. And, is this a team that screams World Series contender? They're going to go on a run, challenge Dodgers? No. Is this a team that you can at least, lean forward on and be like, they might have something here that we can, get some joy out of these last 2 months? Absolutely.
Yeah, and let's just take a look at Blake Snell. Like, I don't know about you watching the game last night, but when I felt like he was locked in was from the very first batter. Like, when he spotted up to the leadoff man with 97 on the paint for his first strikeout of the game, and you mentioned it, he had 11 of them. He struck out the side in the first inning. But that first batter, like, you can tell immediately when Blake Snell, and he has been just extremely locked in, when a lot of lefties, they're not afraid, but a lot of guys are a little intimidated by pitching inside, especially because there's such a fine line to where you're going to plunk a guy, you're going to miss middle. And I think Blake Snell at the beginning of the season was trying to establish the inner half of the plate, but one of the reasons why he was giving up so many hits was he was just missing middle. And last night, he had pinpoint precision with his fastball. And when that's the case, you obviously have the explosive and elite velocity. I mean, he was throwing 98 in the 8th inning. This guy was just absolutely locked in. When he has that kind of pinpoint precision, it also, everything else is so unbelievably hard to hit. The curveball was falling off the table. And that's, last night is a perfect example of why last year with the Padres, that curveball was literally the best pitch in baseball as far as expecting batting average against. The value of the pitch was sky high. That curveball is the best curveball in baseball. And the last 5 starts we've seen it, Sam, because right now, his last 5 starts, he's thrown 33 innings. He struck out 41 batters. He has given up 2 earned runs. Now, he also only has 1 win. He's 1-0. But the Giants themselves, but the Giants themselves are 4-1 in those starts. This is the Blake Snell that they paid for, and they're finally beginning to reap the benefits of it. And it sucks that, to your point, you didn't get it the first 3 or 4 months. But now you're seeing it, and it's why I'm glad that they didn't give up on him at the deadline. Even if they don't get to where they want to go, that would suck. But it doesn't. At least it gives us an opportunity to watch what we were all promised, which is a premier, top-end, left-handed talent that when he's at his best, he might be the best in the world.
Yeah, and especially with, you pair him like with Logan Webb, who, if he found his groove on Wednesday, which with Webb, the big thing there was he found his changeup on Wednesday. He's been trying to find that all year long. It was a great pitch for him last year. It has not been serving him well this year, but Wednesday he might have turned things around. He's in a good mood about that. This is the kind of, you start to see it come together now. We'll see if Harrison kind of keep it going tonight as well, because Harrison, he's been pitching very well his last few starts since he came back from the IL with the rolled ankle. You start to kind of see how a run can come together. It's every playoff team, they go on that stretch where they win like 14 of 18 or something like that. They just go on this ridiculous run.
Yeah.
I think you said, the Giants won 7 of 9 right now. So in a sense, they're kind of halfway there.
It's true.
And they have a perfect opportunity to keep doing this right now with 2 more here in Cincinnati and then 4 in Washington next week. And then the Tigers come to town right after that. If the Giants are going to go on a run, like, this is the time to do it. Your rotation is as healthy as it's going to be. Your bullpen's going to get only more and more rested now as you get more innings out of your starting rotation. I mean, Evan, I checked the numbers this morning. I think for the first time all year, the Giants no longer lead Major League Baseball in bullpen innings pitched. Like, the Brewers have now officially passed them. So there you go. Back-to-back complete games have knocked them out of the lead. And so things are slowly starting to come together for this team. And you got 2 months here, 2 months to show that selling was, not the right thing to do. 2 months to show that sticking with this team was the smart move. And more importantly, you got 2 months to convince Blake Snell that pitching here for the next few years is definitely the right move to make.
888-957-9570 is the number. Evan Giddings, Sam Lubman here. Saturdays on 95.7 The Game. We appreciate everybody chiming in on the YouTube chat and Twitch, powered by First North Cal Credit Union. Shout out to all of you, everyone on the Xfinity Mobile text line. And again, we're going to talk to Dave Fleming at 10 o'clock on the River Islands guest line. So looking forward to that conversation with the voice of Giants baseball and NBC Sports Bay Area. Also joins the morning roast here on 95.7 The Game. I mean, the thing about it is, you're totally right, Sam. Like, this is the time. Number one, because there ain't a lot of time left. But number two, because this is the stretch in the season where you have to get wins. Because that month of September is pretty brutal and actually begins before the month of September. But I'm just looking at right now their upcoming series, and of course they have a chance to win the series later on tonight. It'll be 7:15 local, but 4:15 here on the West Coast at Great American Ballpark. You get Cincinnati. You get Washington for 4 on the road to complete the 7-game roadie. You come home for Detroit, Atlanta. Atlanta hasn't been as formidable as I think they appear to be to a lot of people. Oakland for 2, Chicago, which is just an abomination of a team. And then that's when you hit the road on August 21st. So August 22nd, right there, between now and then, you essentially have 19, in my opinion, Sam, you have 19 days to prove to me that you are legitimately a playoff contender. And it is going to be on the backs of the staff. And it's going to be on Webb. It's going to be on Snell. It's going to be on Harrison, Birdsong, Ray, Hicks to some extent. It's going to be on these guys to show us and keep the Giants in every single game, because if they don't get quality starts, I don't think they're going to win very often. But when you have that kind of pitching, these next opponents that I'm talking about, Atlanta aside, you should win 75% of those games. You should win all of those series. And I think that will also give you enough cushion and put you in a position to when you eventually then face the Seattles, the Milwaukees, the San Diegos, the Arizonas, that going 500 or maybe dropping a series against those teams doesn't kill you. But you have to make it up now, and I'm glad you placed some urgency on the upcoming stretch.
Absolutely. No, I mean, even, I'm looking at the schedule, obviously, and you look at that stretch, even those 4 games against the Braves, they are at home where the Giants have played a lot better this year, so they are going to have that going for them. But you need to stack these wins right now. The Giants, they have one of the softer schedules in baseball the rest of the way. A big part of that is because of that stretch they have coming up. Because after that White Sox series, the month of September gets really hard, really fast. I mean, you got Mariners, Brewers on the road. Then you come home to play the Marlins and the Gabe Kapler Revenge Series. And you got Diamondbacks, Padres. September slate, man. Brewers, Padres. Yeah. Then you got to go on the road.
Yeah.
Just a brutal September road trip here. Baltimore, Kansas City, and then Arizona before you come home for the Brandon Crawford send-off game against the Cardinals.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, you need to stack the wins right now, and that's kind of been the problem with the Giants so far this year is they have not taken advantage of some of the softer spots in their schedule. They have not stacked up wins when they had that chance. When they get into those hard stretches, it doesn't hurt as much. So, hopefully last night, that's the jumping-off point because they have... they don't need to just win games. They need to climb over teams, too. They got to climb over at least 4 teams to get into that third wild card spot right now. They are 4 games behind the Mets and Padres, who are tied for that 6th and final wild card spot. Then you got the Cardinals and Pirates right after that before you got the Giants. So it's going to be a lot of traffic that they're going to have to weave through. But as long as you keep winning games, keep doing your job, these things, they will work out as they should. So you look at what they're at right now, 55 and 56. Probably need to get close to maybe 85, 86 wins to notch that final wild card spot. So their work's cut out for them, for sure.
Yeah, and look, it's all on the heels of Blake Snell's no-hitter last night. First time he's ever gone into the 9th. First time he's obviously ever completed a game. First time he's thrown a shutout. First time he's thrown a no-hitter. That was the apex of Blake Snell's regular season pitching career. And this is a guy that has multiple Cy Youngs, one in each league, one for the Rays, one for the Padres as recently as last year. He pitched in the World Series. He has never been that dominant. And it was funny, too, because was it in the 5th inning that he got pissed at the umpire for not giving him 2 strikes, and then he ended up striking out Jonathan India on a ball, which I thought was funny. But like even within the game, Snell is such a dog, man. Like, it was the reason why I was so excited when they signed him. Even with the expectation, I don't know about you, I didn't expect Snell to get hurt as much as he did, but it would be around this time where I felt like he would actually begin to come into his own. But because I've watched him for so many years and seen the kind of level that he can perform at, this doesn't shock me that he's doing this at this time. The actual no-hitter, yes, is surprising. You don't expect anybody to go out there and do that. But his last 2 starts, he's got 26 strikeouts in 15 innings. He's given up 2 hits. He's given up no runs, and he's walked only 5 batters. That's the kind of Snell that you can get. And is he going to give you that every single time? Perhaps no. But again, over the last 5 starts, he's only given up 2 runs. So this is a guy that is going to absolutely, and he is locked in, he's dialed in right now. He's going to be missing barrels. He's going to be basically putting you in a position to win every single game. And as long as the Giants give him 3 runs, like Snell's the kind of guy, and there have been aces throughout the past in Giants history where I've felt this way as well. If you give these guys any lead early, and the Giants did, it's like, all right, 1-0, fine, ball game's mine for as long as it is. Whether it's 5 innings, 6 innings, for a rarity last night, 9 innings, but the ball game is mine. And Blake Snell is going to put you in a position to win every single game from here on out, in my opinion. And that's all you can ask for. That's why you pay $30 million to an ace, to keep you in every single ball game. And he's now at the point now where he looks healthy. He threw 114 pitches last night on the heels of 103 the start before. This is the Blake Snell you paid for. And I'm just happy that we finally get to see it at least for 2 more months.
Yeah, and I think what you're really starting to see with this team and how it comes together and the vision that they're going for is that it looked like coming in this year, the plan was they were kind of going back to the Giants. They were going back to the formula that helped them win championships back in 10, 12, and 14, which is you have that dominant pitching staff and then supplement it with some good defense and just enough hitting. They finally got the pitching staff in order. The defense, it's been a little bit better this year. There's been some growing pain moments.
Better than last year.
Yeah, better than last year because the bar was set so high from last year. Well, I know they did lead Major League Baseball in outs above average, so that means something to someone out there.
Isn't that funny? Yeah, it's like the stats will tell you that the defense was above average, but I should say the advanced analytics, but the actual statistic of errors will tell you that they were to the bottom.
Yeah, it's just when you need to tweet out 2 more tweets to explain the why finishing with the most outs above average actually means something. It's like, I think it's the old phrase, once you start explaining, you've already lost. So it's like, no one cares about that. But the point is, the defense is better this year. Not always, but it's better. There's been, some growing pain moments. Tyler Fitzgerald, he had kind of a tough error the other night. But when you have, young guys out there, Elliot Ramos, another one, he kind of makes some kind of head scratching, plays out there every now and then. But it's still better this year, as I keep saying how bad it is. But between that, you got guys who, this is like a big power hitting lineup, but this is a lineup that can hit the gaps. You give this team just enough defense, just enough, clutch hitting there with this pitching and a bullpen that I think is a lot better than the numbers will indicate. The formula is there. All the pieces are there. It's just simply now it's on this team. They have to execute. It's all right there before them. They can completely turn this season around, turn the mood on this franchise around. And Farhan Zaidi, a guy who we haven't really mentioned a whole lot so far today, he took a big risk, with the lack of activity that he had at the deadline, rolling with this team and a fan base that wants to run him out of town. He turned a lot of heads and got a lot of side eyes when he says we had the best pitching rotation in baseball this last Tuesday. And on paper, yes, they do have probably one of the best pitching rotations in baseball. The problem with baseball, though, is it's played on the field. It's not played on paper. But when you see what we've seen from this pitching rotation since the All-Star break, all right, maybe the paper might be a little bit more real than we thought at first.
Well, it's not just one game, and it's not just on paper. It's been on the field for Blake Snell, not for the San Francisco Giants, but for Blake Snell, the last 5 games on the field, he has been dominant. And I'm curious what fans think about his performance last night, what they've seen from him so far, if it was worth it. Do you feel confident the rest of the way each time he takes the ball every 5th day? 888-957-9570. Evan Giddings and Sam Lubman here with you Saturdays on the game. Also, Ken Luttrell in the house. What's going on, man?
Good morning, boys. I love what you're talking about so far. And Sam, you were just talking about the offense real quick, because obviously Snell was so spectacular last night, 11 strikeouts. But one thing, Tyler Fitzgerald, another home run. He's got 9 home runs since July 1st. And that leadoff spot, it seems like he's taken over for Soler. Anybody want to guess how many home runs Soler has since July 1st?
2.
Close, 3. So
that's be my guess.
So yeah, if Price is right, you probably would have won. But yeah,
that's right.
It just goes to show they don't need Soler. They got a home run hitter.
Soler's not really doing much in Atlanta so far, too. So.
He had an RBI last night, though.
Okay, there you go. All right, things looking up for him.
Tyler Fitzgerald's treating MLB pitching like it's the PCL. Like, this dude is absolutely raking.
He is locked in at another level.
But can we call him the Great Gatsby?
Please explain.
I see where he's going.
Scott Fitzgerald.
Fitzgerald. All right. All right. It's like 2.5.
It's a little early in the morning. One flew over my head. I was out until early in the morning.
One flew over your cuckoo's nest.
Yeah, well,
totally different.
Yeah, that's a very
Totally
different tone. Very different tone there. Oh man, that is but no, you're right. It's kind of the offense has to be cobbled together. Someone like Tyler Fitzgerald, if he has a moment or two like he did last night, and you get the kind of pitching you do from Snell, that's how you're going to win games. And you kind of brought it up, Sam. That was the formula for all the great Giants teams. Now I would argue that their offense was more consistent and dependable. You didn't know who it was going to be, but you had confidence that it was going to arise. Like, for example, Fitzgerald is, I think, taking a little bit of the limelight off of Elliot Ramos, who's taken somewhat of a step back in recent memory, but he's still a really good young player. But where the Giants going to find the rest of their offense, I'm not so sure. On the other side, however, Sam, I do want to revisit that press conference you were at with Farhan Zaidi. And you kind of posed it to the fans, so I'll do it again. 888-957-9570. Is Snell and his performance right now worth not moving, not pivoting at the deadline? I'm not sure if fans feel confident yet in this team, but if they can get to 500 today, if by the time they get back to Oracle Park next week and they look somewhat, like a serviceable ball club, they're above 500, that might be enough. But they got to continue to win games. And I do wonder right now, listening to Farhan Zaidi, what it would have taken to trade Blake Snell. Right now, I'll ask the question, is it worth it? Was it worth it not moving off of him for what you're getting right now? All right, this is Saturdays on the Game with Evan Giddings and Sam Lubman, 888-957-9570. We also got Dave Fleming, NBC Sports Bay Area, was on the call last night for Blake Snell's first career no-hitter, 18th in Giants franchise history. We're going to talk to him at 10 o'clock on the River Islands guest line. All of that and more coming up next as we move forward on 95.7 The Game.
The Dodgers not going quietly. It's a one-run game.
Now back to 95.7 The Game.
I think that was Steven Nelson filling in for Joe Davis. Sportsnet LA. Shohei Ohtani also had a nice performance last night at the Coliseum. Didn't matter, though. A's 165.
I guess that Ohtani guy, what a bust. And Dodgers threw that money away.
What does he even do?
They're going to regret that deal in a few years.
What?
Are you serious?
I mean, without his running mates, the guy...
What was the over-under for runs last night? Did Shohei at least hit that?
Yeah, I think he actually put the total over.
There you go.
Yeah, 3-run bomb. That ball was crushed.
It's
116 off the bat.
Right to the right of the stairs there out in right field.
Yeah, but to hit it that low, that far is just it's kind of unfathomable. Like, not many people can do that. Someone like Ellie De La Cruz is probably like a StatCast god to a lot of people. O'Neal Cruz, all the Cruzes, it feels like. Yeah, a lot of cruise missiles going out.
Yeah,
yeah, Ohtani. Surprisingly, this might come as a shock to a lot of Giants fans, actually. Good Lord. But Matt Chapman is actually a guy that, if you look at the exit velocity leaderboards, is quite high. Like, he hits the ball really hard.
He hit some piss missiles off those bats.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think that's kind of been his calling card this year because, the average hasn't been super high.
Yeah.
He does have a lot of extra base hits, though. That's why the OPS isn't as terrible.
There's been some sneaky speed this year from Chapman. I'm pretty sure he leads the Giants in stolen bases right now, which may or may
12.
not be. May or may not be. I mean, it's a good thing for Matt Chapman. It's probably not a great thing for the Giants. I've never looked at Matt Chapman and been like, oh, don't let him get on the bases. He'll turn a single into a triple really fast. But no, it's been a solid season for Matt Chapman. I think. If there's any frustrations with Chapman, I think it comes from the fact that a lot of people probably were expecting, Oakland A's version of Matt Chapman, not Toronto Blue Jays version of Matt Chapman. And they're getting, somewhat somewhere in between. The defense has just been immaculate from him this year, though. And that's where I think a lot of the WAR value he's had come from. But all around, it's been a very fun year watching Chappie go.
No, I mean, he's a 5-win player.
Yeah.
He is the best player on the Giants and the most valuable player on the Giants.
Oh, by far, yeah.
And partially it's because, unlike a lot of his recent seasons, he's been able to stay healthy. He's played 108 games, which is by far and away the most of any single Giant. The 15 home runs may not jump out to some because he's probably on pace for, around low 20s, mid 20s as far as the bombs. But he's almost got 30 doubles. And I think that's something that flies under the radar because people just care about home runs, understandably. And the Giants, to their discredit, don't hit a lot. I mean, they're 12th in the NL of 15 teams in terms of home runs. But extra base hits, that will play. And Matt Chapman does have the ability to get you extra bases, and not a lot of guys on this team do. Last night, it was the young guys. It was Tyler Fitzgerald with his bomb late in that game. And then even a further one earlier in the game off the bat of Casey Schmidt. So, and Schmidt's a player, like, the Giants do have a lot of these guys. And Fitzgerald's kind of bucking the trend because he's swinging the hell out of it. But they have a lot of gravy guys. And that's where their offense falls flat for me, is that they're fine defensively. Maybe they have another tool. Maybe they can run. Maybe they're good in the field, a la Schmidt. But anything they give you at the plate is gravy. Well, that's nice if you have, one or two of those guys in your lineup. I mean, looking at the Dodgers last night, because of the absence of, say, Betts and Freeman, they have more of those players, more of those expected outs in their lineup. But the Giants just have too many guys where it's gravy if they give you something offensively.
It's a good way to look at it, yeah.
And I think that's why their offense is not very threatening, or hasn't been threatening to me for the majority of the season.
No, I mean, really, and that's kind of for a while, it's kind of been how the Giants' offense is. But yeah, you look at this lineup. I mean, Fitzgerald, he's going to get hot at times. Bailey, he'll get hot at times. Conforto, he got hot that one time earlier in the year. We're still waiting to see what kind of bat that Marco Luciano is going to have. So I mean, yeah, just kind of building off that, or is it gravy what you get? But a part of it is just like you're not really sure what they can actually bring to the table in terms of just like. Just offensively, what they can or will bring to the table long term, what their offensive ceiling is. I mean, like right now, you look at Elliot Ramos. He's their lone all-star. He broke the Chili Davis curse, 38 years without a homegrown outfielder. But when I look at Ramos, and this is going to sound like I'm crushing the guy. I'm not. I'm very excited for his future here with the Giants, but
I wanted to trade him, so.
Some people probably did. But no, I didn't want to trade Ramos. He's the first good thing to come out of this farm system in several thousand years, it feels
I was only
like.
half joking.
But I mean, if it was, for Vlad Jr., you would have had my attention.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. But Evan, I always look at, when it comes to the Giants, they've always been defined by that homegrown star in the middle of the lineup. Going back, I mean, you take it all the way back to the 1880s when this team was New York Gothams. I won't take it back that far. But just here in the San Francisco era, you got Willie Mays.
What were those games like, Sam? Do you remember?
Oh, those early Gotham games?
Yeah,
Civil War. Jim Mutry, man, he ran a tight ship for those early Gotham teams, man. Don't get me started on the bat of William Buck Ewing, man.
Playing with a ball of yarn.
Kind of like a mashed potatoes guy.
Home runs were illegal.
I don't even think they had like a wall back then. I think the ball just like kept rolling, and it was like a little league home run. You hit it far enough, you just run around the bases.
Or if it got plugged in the mud and then nobody could find it, you could just run around the bases.
Something like the fits there, just all those wool suits on those hot summer days, man. That was.
I want to say that, God, I forget looking at some of those old stats, but like I don't know, some position player named Rusty Turnbuckle led the league with 12 home runs, and that was by far and away the most.
I was like George High Pockets Kelly.
Yeah,
he was in those early 1920s Giants teams. That's.
Hey, to jump in here, wasn't the one of the rules early on, if the ball bounced in field and went over the wall, it was considered a home run?
I remember there was a time. So I think this is going way back. Sounds
like some schoolyard bushwhack.
Yeah, I think one of the earlier rules I recall is back before they had like actual walls, they would put like ropes or whatnot around the field, and like you couldn't go over the rope if you were a fan, and you can imagine how effective that was.
Like cricket.
Is it like cricket?
Cricket doesn't have a wall; it's just like a border.
So is this like find a patch of grass, let's play some cricket?
Pretty much.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
they have one. Yeah, technically the low walls right in front of the stands in cricket arenas.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I need to get up on my cricket game then. But
it's a pretty fun game.
There was a period where, if the ball would roll into the crowd from the field, they ruled it, I believe, a ground rule triple at the time. Early baseball, man, it was pretty wild. But back to the point I was making.
Yeah, sorry.
The Giants have always, and ADD radio, it's a staple of the morning roast. But you talk about, the Giants, they've been defined by that homegrown hitter. From, Willie Mays and Willie McCovey in the 60s. You had Jack Clark in the 70s, Will Clark in the 80s. Take it, Barry Bonds, not homegrown, but maybe in a different way. And then you had Buster Posey. But now you got Elliot Ramos. And just when I compare Elliot Ramos to those other hitters that have come before him, I don't know, he feels a little out of place. But again, it's right now. Basically, it's a long-winded way of saying that as much as I like Elliot Ramos, I don't know if he's that pillar bat that you're going to be building this lineup around consistently for the next few years. I still think the Giants need to find, like, if Elliot Ramos is your second best hitter in the lineup, like, then I think you're doing good. Like, he's the Klay Thompson of the Giants. The Giants just need to find their Steph Curry right now. And maybe that's Bryce Eldridge down in the minors. Maybe it's a bat they get this offseason, but you talk about these guys or their gravy guys, what they bring to the table. They bring bits and pieces to the table, but right now, it's just enough, hopefully, to get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, someone like Ramos, and again, Saturday's in the game. Evan Giddings, Sam Lubman, Ken Luttrell in the house here on 95.7 The Game. We got Dave Fleming coming up in about 20 minutes to talk about Blake Snell's no-hitter last night in Cincinnati.
I just want you guys to talk about me the way you talk about Mike Florio.
I do love Dave Fleming, and he's going to join us courtesy of the River Islands guest line. Yeah, fantastic call last night. But as far as Ramos is concerned, like he's an interesting guy because you're right. I don't think, and maybe not a Klay Thompson. I don't think if this team is going to go where it wants to go, that his importance needs to be at that level. But maybe closer to like I don't know, an Andre Iguodala. And what I mean by that is your fourth player on a really good team because whenever he hits the ball, he hits it really hard. But his chase rate is a bit high. He swings and misses quite a bit. He strikes out a lot. And he's been getting beaten more up in the zone. So teams are beginning to adjust to him, but that doesn't take away from the fact that he still had an all-star season and has, for a month, in fact, has carried this Giants offense. And now it feels like the baton has been handed to Tyler Fitzgerald. And, lo and behold, Sam, Mark Canha got on 3 times last night. Giants are 1-0 in the Mark Canha era.
That's the vibes. Every time Mark Canha's in the lineup, the Giants throw a no-hitter.
Yay!
That's called correlation right there.
It's a correlation sensation. Also,
That's a buck.
That's a buck. Yeah, I don't have any. But as far as what we're also trying to get into right before the end of the first segment, and again, 888-957-9570 is the number. You brought up Farhan Zaidi, and you were at the press conference post trade deadline, and you asked him a fantastic question about the fans, but also what was discussed among the litany of things that he went down was this idea of what the Giants would have had to receive, or what they would have had to be comfortable with receiving if they were going to move off the guy who threw the no-hitter last night, and that was Blake Snell. Here's what he had to say.
Trading him would have changed the course of this season, where we still believe in what we can accomplish. And again, leaning into our youth, leaning to our rotation is really the plan. So if someone really came to us with something we thought could really change our future, then, and you're making that sort of trade-off of the present versus, 2026, 2027, that's challenging. But again, I think the way things have come together this rotation, it was really going to have to be something that we thought would do just that, just like really change the course of future years for this organization, and not just be sort of a package of prospects that, would slide into this slot and that slot on your Baseball America list, and that just didn't happen.
I don't agree with a lot of what Farhan Zaidi says, but I do agree with that. Like, I agree with just about everything he said, which was trading Blake Snell alters the course of our season. I agree, because you still might not make the postseason, but if you traded Blake Snell at the deadline, you give up any chance of making the postseason. Mm-hmm. I also don't think that there was a package out there that could have changed the course of 2026 or 2027, and I have seen so many teams give up basically their only arm that is going to get them to a place where they, envision themselves for just a bunch of guys, for guys who are numbers on prospect lists. It happens all the time. And that's where the Padres, I think, have found a little bit of a kind of a crease in the trade market the last few years, where they've pumped out so many guys that, sure, a few of them are going to hit. The haul that, for example, like the Nationals got for Juan Soto, that looks pretty good because you got a starting shortstop in C.J. Abrams, and now you're finally beginning to see the top dog from that haul in James Wood. But I don't know if those guys are going to be good. I don't know if the Giants, if they traded Blake Snell for, let's say, a number 5, a number 6, a number 7 prospect, even if it was a top 5 prospect, if that guy is going to turn into a dude. And if they'd be willing to give that player the runway to be successful in the immediate and down the line, because the only time that we've really seen the young players be allowed to step up and step in and carry this team, Sam, as far as the position players are concerned, is when there's been injuries. So I agree wholeheartedly with them not trading Blake Snell at the deadline, and I think the last 5 starts have been an example of why, which is that's your one. That's your ace. And if you are going to make the postseason, you need him on the team.
Well, also, if you're Farhan Zaidi, if you're going to make this big move to bring in Blake Snell, and he's said it a couple times, we pushed a lot of chips in with this team. And part of that is with Blake Snell, because and Matt Chapman too. They gave up draft picks to bring those guys in, Evan. And the Giants, they loved holding on to their draft picks, and so that was kind of a big breakaway move for them with the way they brought in Snell and Chapman to then move off of Snell at the deadline after this season. Yeah, I could totally get why Farhan would be kind of lying in the weeds, waiting for the perfect deal to materialize. They kind of did something similar back in 2022 with Carlos Rodon, who was having a Cy Young caliber season, but there it was kind of easy for them to kind of sit back and say, give us what we want, because they did have the option to extend a qualifying offer to Rodon back then, which they did do. And the thinking back then was, we can hold out, extend that qualifying offer and get the comp pick and just find our own prospect, because whatever we get there with that comp pick is going to be equal to what we would have gotten back from Carlos Rodon. This time, though, it's a little bit different because, Blake Snell, he got the qualifying offer last year, so he cannot get one this year. So if he does walk, the Giants would be losing him for nothing. So if you are going to move off of him mid-season, you're going to make sure that you're going to get something of legitimate value for you. And, a lot of people like to bring up, no top 100 prospects were moved. So there's two ways
across baseball.
Across baseball. None of the top 100 prospects across baseball were moved in any of these trades. I think the biggest names that were moved were Isaac Paredes from the Rays to the Cubs. Did I say that right?
Paredes. Yeah,
Paredes.
God,
Paredes in the USA.
I worked with that guy in Double-A. His name has been pronounced 17 different ways throughout his minor league career.
All right, well, I won't feel bad then.
You're right.
And then Jack Flaherty, who I believe it's his turn to have to face the Brent Rooker show tonight for the Dodgers.
Don't forget about Shea Bangaliers, baby.
Shea Bangaliers, Zach Gallen. I love the A's lineup, by the way. I'm so jealous of that lineup.
So do they.
Just quick aside, Brent Rooker was my Mr. Irrelevant pick this year. He was my last pick in my fantasy draft. Whew. And he was my Brock Purdy, so to speak. And
he's performing like Brock Purdy.
Oh, he has been performing. I start calling him Brent Purdy now.
He was the guy that I wanted the Giants to try and trade for to replace Soler at the DH spot. I know that Luciano is getting those at bats and has played pretty well so far, but that was the dude that I wanted.
I would have thought that the Phillies were going to be in on Brent Rooker because he would have been perfect for that lineup. But that's the point is, Paredes and Flaherty are the two biggest names, and no one was moved for a top 100 prospect. So the two ways you can look at that is, well, that's why you couldn't move Blake Snell because there just were no deals there. And Fleming joined us on the Morning Roast on Wednesday. He kind of echoed that sentiment. There just weren't any deals there. The other way you could look at it is, well, Farhan, it's your job to make these deals happen. If you want to go get your deal for Blake Snell, you got to go out and make it happen. It doesn't have to be for the number one prospect in baseball. If they flip Blake Snell for Jackson Holiday, I think we'd be throwing a parade for Farhan Zaidi right now. But even a guy like, let's get the number 50 prospect. Reason I picked him out. Right now, the number 50 prospect on MLB.com's website is Lazaro Montes. He's an outfielder for the Mariners, Farhan's favorite team to make a deal with. You do something like that? I don't know. This guy's 19 years old. He's in high A ball right now, not expected to come up for another couple of years. You can make a deal like that, and then it's like all the pressure now is on this guy to come up and make that trade worth it, in a sense. It's a lot of pressure to put on a kid who you don't know what he's going to be or not. So you could ask him to go make that deal, but dealing for prospects, unless they're a sure thing, for a guy like Blake Snell, no, I understand Farhan's desire to maybe kind of back off there and just like, you know what, we'll ride it out here these next 2 months and just see what happens.
Well, you mentioned Dave Fleming. We're going to talk to him in 10 minutes on the River Islands guest line. Dave Fleming, voice of the Giants, NBC Sports Bay Area, is going to join us here on Saturdays with Evan Giddings and Sam Lubman. 888-957-9570 is the number. Before we get to Dave, I do want to get out to Gary, talk to the fans about what's going on with the Giants right now post-trade deadline. Gary Bear, what's going on, man? How are you?
Hey, great show as always. Enjoy my Saturday mornings listening to you. It's refreshing not to have to listen to some gambling show on the national network. So
thanks, man.
I'm a terrible gambler, so there you go.
So anyway, yeah, just the trade deadline thing, and so Farhan is doubling down on his pitching, which I get. Trading Cobb, well, that was kind of a head scratcher in case something happens with Harrison and Birdsong, but I thought maybe shoring up the defense in center field, because I don't trust Ramos out there, especially last night when him and Yaz came together at the end of the ball game there. I said, oh no, not again. But what do you guys think about that too, Gary? Yeah, no, I imagine that Snell was kind of taking a deep breath, but good for Blake, man. I'm happy for him. But what about Kiermaier? The Dodgers added him, but what do you think something like that would have been? And, of course, they added Canna, which is kind of a replacement for Soler. I just thought it was kind of a mini salary dump. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the goal of the deadline, as it appears, was to get a little bit cheaper while keeping your chances of making the postseason exactly the same. Yeah, but this is kind of my frustration with the Giants deadline is, what did you accomplish? You're trying to shed salary to get under the competitive tax balance level. You shed future salary. You didn't shed enough to get under the tax this year. Okay, you shed future salary, but if the plan was to get under the tax line, you failed to do that, so that's something you're going to have to deal with this winter. Was the goal to then add enough to make yourself a better team? Not really. I mean, Mark Canna is, in my eyes, he's basically an AJ Pollock 2.0. So at that, did you do anything to beef up your farm system? No, not really. You didn't do that either. So you didn't really accomplish anything at the trade deadline. A guy like a Kevin Kiermaier, that would probably be a slightly better addition than a Mark Canna.
I know right now with the Giants, I mean, they like having Yaz out there and right. He's very good defensively. Ramos, they're going to keep him in the, out in center a lot more. I think he's getting better out there. I understand Gary's kind of mistrust of Ramos out there because he has made some plays that, especially he's had some miscommunications. Luis Matos out there.
He's not the center fielder of your future.
No, I think he's a future left fielder. The center fielder of the future is Jung-Hoo Lee, but, we know why he's not available right now. And then they are going to keep Conforto out there because they're just going to keep riding that as long as they can. Tyler Fitzgerald will probably get some run in center field too from time to time. Kiermaier would have been an interesting addition. I would not have been against that. And I don't know what was given up to get Kiermaier. Probably wasn't a whole lot. I can't imagine you would have been parting with any pieces that we would be missing someday. So yeah, to Gary's point, that would have been helpful.
It was for Ryan Yarbrough, who also used to pitch for the Rays.
Oh, that's actually a major league ready reliever.
He's been pretty bad this year.
Yeah, I know. He should stay on the Dodgers. But yeah, we'll see how. I mean, also there's a part where you want to see Ramos improve with his outfield defense. That's only going to happen with more and more reps, and he's a guy that, when he starts feeling confident in himself, when he starts getting that belief in himself, you start to see it translate to the game. Like earlier in the year, we would ask him a lot, like, what's different this time? Like, what's different this year versus 22 and 23 when he had a couple cups of coffee up here with the Giants and they didn't go very well. And he was almost kind of forgotten about. And that's his thing. He's feeling confident. He's feeling locked in. And you saw it translate the plate. And my guess is that'll eventually start to translate in the field as well.
Yeah, and as far as Kiermaier, that's actually somebody that I think could have helped the Giants a little bit, but I don't think it would have excited people. Kevin Kiermaier is hitting below 200 this year. He's coming off a season where he won the Gold Glove, so he's clearly a great defensive center fielder. In fact, he's one of the more undervalued center fielders on the defensive side, probably of his generation. This guy he can go get it, but he doesn't help you, I think, in the ways that the Giants need, and he's essentially... He'd be a bottom of the order bat, is probably only going to play against righties, and is not anybody that's going to stick around, in my opinion, to help you long term. So,
and that just gets in the way of getting at bats for Luis Matos, who at some point this rest of the year he will be back on this team. So I know there's a lot of people within that Giants clubhouse who are high on what Matos can do. And a guy like Kevin Kiermaier would just block that.
Yeah, or another player that you would like to get some at-bats to. We'll talk about all that and more, but I do want to get back to the topic of the day, the A block, the story of the day, which is Blake Snell. And helping us doing that on the other side is going to be the man who was on the call of last night's game in Cincinnati, and that is Dave Fleming. He's going to join us via the River Islands guest line. And the Giants play later on today at 4:15 here Pacific Standard, but before they do that, we're going to talk to Fleming about Blake Snell, about the Giants, where they're at. They've won 7 of 9. Snell's coming off his first complete game, his first no-hitter, the 18th in franchise history. A great day for the Giants, but can they keep it up? Can they keep this thing rolling? We're going to discuss that all next with Dave Fleming coming up here on Saturdays with Evan Giddings and Sam Lubman. We're back after this on 95.7 The Game.
They can't say it anymore. A weak game, shutout, no hitter, leave me alone. He doesn't go to 9, doesn't go to 8. Y'all get that feels? Just did it. Leave me alone.
Now back to 95.7 The Game.
That was Blake Snell after throwing the 18th no-hitter in Giants franchise history. I'm sorry, man. I've always liked him. I just think he's kind of a cool personality. Like he's a gamer. I think he's very candid. He does a lot of in-game interviews, at least he used to when he was with Tampa Bay and San Diego. He's just a cool cat. So I'm really happy. Number one, that he helped the Giants win last night and continue the stretch of 7 of 9. Sam, but he's a guy that's a very likable person, and I hope that he's around next year. But I'm also just excited to see him pitch the last 2 months.
No, and you are starting to see that personality kind of come forward here. Because earlier in the year, we go and do those post game pressers with him, and it was after a bad outing, so he was never really in a good mood. And I heard all this stuff about how great he is, how funny he is, how great of an interview that he is. And for the first couple months of the season, you just weren't seeing it. It was kind of depressing, really, because especially I always remember the 17-1 game against the Diamondbacks. He was a starter for that one, and it felt so dismal in there. And you had a lot of those outings, and it was that in-game interview he did last month. I forget who they were playing, but you really started to see that. Cruton went with him for like 20 minutes. And I remember the Giants got 2 quick outs, and then Kruko's like, oh, we might not have you for much longer. And Snell's like, whoa, we're a 2-out team. And then, of course, the Giants put together a little 2-out rally that I think netted them, I think it was like 4 straight walks, and they got like 1 run out of it. Classic Giants offense. But in that interview, you really started to see that personality of Blake Snell come out. And we're seeing it a lot more now. And you saw that interview with him last night where he got bonked in the head with the lid. He was making a joke about it. And, Dave Fleming doing a really good job in that interview. And I think he's on the line right now.
Yes, he is joining us right now on 95.7 The Game on the River Islands guest line. Isn't it time for you to discover the islands, River Islands in Lathrop? Evan Giddings, Sam Lubman. Pleased to be joined now by Dave Fleming, was on the call last night for Blake Snell's no-hitter in Cincinnati. Dave, thank you so much for hopping on with us. How are you?
I'm good. Hi, guys.
Well, Dave, I feel like we got to start with where we just picked up. Blake Snell, he was utterly dominant. A lot of firsts for him last night. First time he goes into the 9th, first time he throws a complete game, first time he throws a no-hitter. You were on the call for it. Is it something that you can kind of sense early? Obviously, he's been supremely dominant coming off of 15 strikeout performance. But when did you kind of get the sense that he was perhaps on the verge of doing something that he had not been able to do before to this point in his career?
Well, I don't know if I thought he was going to pitch a no-hitter, but I think you could go back and watch that first inning, and I could make an argument that it's the greatest first inning I've ever seen pitched. I mean, he was unbelievable from pitch one last night, and truly, I was almost speechless after the first inning. Was like, well, that's as good as I've ever seen anybody throw the ball. I mean, it was unhittable dominance. I think every pitch but one in the first inning was a strike, and he blew them away. So we certainly had an inkling that the stuff that he's had his last few starts was going to carry over into last night. Whether we had any clue that he was going to throw a no-hitter, I guess, is a whole different thing. That would be hard to sense in the first inning, but gosh, that was one of my favorite parts about last night, was how great it started and how dominant he looked from literally the very first pitch he threw.
So, Dave, you've called a lot of no-hitters in your time broadcasting games for the Giants, and you said obviously you don't come to the ballpark expecting a no-hitter, but as you're watching Blake Snell put in that work, as the innings start stacking up, you start seeing more and more zeros on the scoreboard there. At what point do you start to kind of get the sense like, oh, wow, he's not just pitching well. He's pitching well enough to where we might actually be able to have a no-hitter developing here?
Yeah, the pitch count was the thing that obviously, now in this modern age, that's what we kind of worry about. And when in the 5th inning, when he walked a couple guys, he talked to us after the game about how mad he was at himself, and he got mad at the umpire, and Bailey intervened. And then there was that at bat. I think it was Santiago Espinal had a 9-pitch at bat to start an inning. And Snell got him out, but it was the kind of at-bat that was like, oh, man, that might cost him a chance to finish this game. And I think right after that, he got a couple very quick outs, and that's when my brain sort of started to think, oh, okay. Now that he got through that, I think he's got a chance to really do this. But I do want to repeat what I said a minute ago. Like, from pitch one, he threw a 96-mile-an-hour fastball exactly on the black the first pitch of the game. And for him, he's got such great stuff no matter what. It's always about his command. And that first pitch, to me, announced, I know it sounds crazy, but announced like, okay, he's here to dominate tonight. So in the back of my head, I never felt nervous about him giving up a hit. There was never an at-bat where I thought, oh, this guy's on him or he's seeing the ball really well. It was purely a matter of, can he be efficient enough to finish the game?
Dave Fleming joining us on 95.7 The Game via the River Islands guest line. It's funny you mentioned that because watching the game, the first pitch certainly, but the first strikeout where he just puts 97 right on the hands of Jonathan India, who has no chance. There was definitely a tone-setting first inning for him, of course, striking out the side. So I'm 100% with you. And as far as the remainder of the game, I know there wasn't necessarily maybe the standout defensive play. There was the line-out double play. But there was a moment midway through that game where Snell had to kind of overcome perhaps some frustration with the strike zone, right? And that actually was against Jonathan India again, where he puts a changeup on the black, not called a strike, breaking ball low and in, not called a strike. He actually gets quite, visibly frustrated with the umpire, and then eventually strikes out India on maybe the pitch that wasn't actually the strike during that at bat. So, I mean, you've seen Blake Snell for the majority of this season. I felt like that illustrated how much of a bulldog he is. And I'm just very happy that Giants fans are now getting to witness consecutively, successively, just the competitor that he is, in addition to how good he is at throwing the baseball.
He's a very, more even than having watched him from afar, and I've seen a lot of his starts on the other side over the years, but he is more emotional and fiery on the mound than I think I realized. And that can be good. And it can also, I think he admits that sometimes it costs him a little bit. Sometimes he makes it a little harder on himself. So I have enjoyed learning that about him because I am a sucker for guys who kind of let their emotions play out in front of all of us. I think it makes the game more fun. And that was definitely the one moment where things were starting to get, and he had a right to be upset a couple of those pitches in that inning where Bailey had to come out and calm him down, and he's barking at Malachi Moore. A couple of those pitches were not balls, and they were called balls, and so I get why he was upset about that. Ultimately, he and the umpire, that was a pretty good pairing for him. So in the moment he wasn't happy, but ultimately that was a pretty good strike zone for him.
So Dave, big thing that, Bob Melvin's talked about, Farhan Zaidi's talked about this week is that, playoff teams, they need to go on those runs where they win, 14 of 18 to really kind of, juice the record up, get them into that playoff positioning there. You're seeing the Giants start to heat up. I believe they've won 7 of their last 9, but, when you look at what Logan Webb did on Wednesday night, what Blake Snell did last night, are those the kind of performances that can kind of help jumpstart this team to go on one of those extended runs that, Farhan and Bo Mel have been kind of hoping that's coming along for a while now?
Yeah, that's probably how it's going to have to happen for this team because, look, the Giants offense in the first half actually was better statistically than probably everybody realized, especially considering offense around all of baseball's down. I think probably folks underestimated how good, not great, but good the Giants offense was in the first half of the year. And since the All-Star break, it has not been very good. And with Lamont Wade beat up and still looking a little compromised at the plate in his legs, and Michael Conforto he's just struggling to get it going. And I feel for those guys. Mike Yastrzemski's been good, solid. But a lot of those veterans outside of Matt Chapman are really having a hard time right now. It's harder to see the path for like an explosive Giants offense. So I think the formula for this team is going to have to be lean on that pitching. And we'll see. The key is probably some of those guys you mentioned, the younger guys. I think Webb and Snell are going to do their part. I don't think there's much doubt about that. But if Harrison can keep on the trajectory that he's on, he's been, to me, very encouraging his last couple times. Hayden Birdsong's kind of a wild card. We're entering uncharted territory with him. He's throwing a lot of innings, way more than he has as a pro. We'll see how he holds up. Robbie Ray's coming off surgery. Those guys all can be dominators, but it's not a guarantee that they are. And probably the Giants' chances for a run that you're talking about come down to those three. If those three can pitch at a really high level, you got an opportunity to go 9-1 or 10-2 or whatever it's going to take to get them right there in the mix.
Television and radio voice of the San Francisco Giants, Dave Fleming is joining us on 95.7 The Game via the River Islands guest line. You know, taking a look at this stretch right now that they're on, Cincinnati, Washington, Detroit, Atlanta for 4, but then Oakland and Chicago. You know, how much urgency do you feel like is on this kind of 12-game or 14-game stretch before you get into the Seattles, the Milwaukees? I know you can't look too far ahead, but do you feel like this is the time, if the San Francisco Giants are to make a run, that these next few series against some teams that have not performed necessarily well as of late, nor over the course of the season, is this the time for San Francisco to try and make a run?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to. It is hard to schedule wins. You know, we all want to do it. We all want to look at the schedule. Oh, that's a win. This is a win. That's a tough series. This is an easier series. It really does not work that way. However, what I would say is, if you go through kind of the first weekend of September, there are definitely some tough opponents in there. Definitely, but the month of September features 6 games against Arizona, 6 games against the Padres, and 3 games against the Cardinals. And you have to be in a position to make those games matter. Like if they're 5 or 6 games behind those teams come those series, you're almost certainly not going to make up that ground, even when you get head-to-head matchups. If you're 2 games out, then you got a chance to really make those games matter. And that's where I think the next 3 weeks, whether you think the schedule's easy or not, you just have to put yourself in a position to make those games matter. Otherwise, you're finally going to get the head-to-head matchups against the teams you're trying to chase down, and it won't make enough of a difference. So that's, you know, the A's are playing well. The Braves are a tough team. You've got the Mariners and the Brewers. That road trip is not going to be easy at all. But you got to win a lot of those games so that the Diamondbacks, Padres, Cardinals games are the ones that are the most important games of the year.
So, Dave, I mean, if they're going to go on a run and make the playoffs, step one is going to be getting back to 500. They have a chance to do it tonight, but getting back to 500 has been a real challenge for this team, Dave. They are 2-10 when they enter a game with a chance to get back to 500. And one of those wins was game 2 of the year when they beat the Padres to improve their record to 1-1. I'm just curious, in your opinion, why it's been so difficult for this team to get over that hump and get, to 500 and then above 500 after that?
Well, I think a lot of it has been the lack of consistency on the pitching side. The offense has been frustrating for sure at times, but I think the biggest story of the year up until now feels different because they have a different looking starting rotation. But up until now, whether it's because of injuries and having to bullpen so many games or whatever the case, the Giants just haven't been able to get hot for a week to get to that 500 and a couple of games over, but to me, because of the inconsistency of the pitching. Now that they have that, you got a much better chance to not be so allergic to 500. Let's see if they can pull it off tonight. Not going to be easy. Hunter Green's been almost like Paul Skeens here these last few weeks. Like, he's been awesome for the Reds. So the Giants have their hands full tonight.
Dave Fleming joining us on the River Islands guest line here on 95.7 The Game. And I did want to ask you a little bit about the offense because at the deadline, there's certainly a direction that indicated they're going to expect to lean more on their younger players. And with that comes some inconsistency. You see the highs of Tyler Fitzgerald. Someone like Elliot Ramos has maybe regressed a bit, but has still been performing over the course of this year fantastic. How much confidence do you feel like has been instilled and given to these younger players. That has to feel empowering in one breath, that they believe that these younger players can help this offense at least stay at a level competitive enough to then, with the pitching staff, ideally get you to a place where you're making a postseason push. How much confidence do you have that these younger players in their first real chase to October can stand the test?
I have a lot of confidence. I think it's always a test for young guys. And it's not just the pressure of how important games are. It's also the grind of a long season. Like, even guys who are used to playing full minor league seasons, the big league season's a month longer. And that, when you're digging deep day after day after day, that extra month of games can be really taxing on younger players. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges for that group of guys that you're talking about is, how will they hold up mentally, physically over a longer season? If you've never done it before, and a lot of those guys have had a taste of a longer season before, but if you haven't done it before, it's a challenge. I mean, I know Bob Melvin told us the other day that he really feels like part of Tyler Fitzgerald's success has been when they let Nick Ahmed go. And, Tyler, young guys have a tendency for many different reasons. But when you're trying to establish yourself as a major league player, not just a tweener or a guy who's getting a cup of coffee or whatever, you're trying to establish your career and set yourself up to have a long career here. Everything that comes with that, making a lot of money, all the perks of being a big leaguer, the adrenaline rush of playing in these big ballparks, all that stuff. There's just so much pressure you put on yourself to make it stick. Every opportunity, I got to prove that that's who I am. And that is a hard way to perform. And so I think Bob's point was when the Giants let Nick Ahmed go and basically told Tyler Fitzgerald, maybe without saying the words out loud, you're here. You're on this team. You're a part of this team, that he relaxed and didn't feel like every single at bat was a referendum on the future of him and his family. I mean, I think sometimes that's like how the pressure can feel for these guys. And you're seeing a really good result from it. So sometimes it is that opportunity that's uninhibited that can unlock an extra level of performance from a talented player.
Dave, we obviously we brought you on to talk some baseball and talk about Blake Snell, but I know you're very well rounded in the world of sports, doing football, you do golf. We got some Olympic action going up on the TV here in the studio. So I'm kind of curious. I know you're a busy guy calling all these games, but with the Olympics going on, have you been locking into them? Are there events that you kind of like to watch more than others? How locked in is Dave Fleming on the Olympics right now?
Yeah, I like the daytime aspect of it. We're working every night, so the primetime coverage is sort of lost on me, and it is almost every Olympics. It's one of the downsides of, doing what we do is that when the other stuff is going on, we kind of miss it. But I love the fact that you can flip it on during the daytime. I'm into almost all of it. Like I love my college roommate was a potential Olympian, and when you go to Stanford, there's lots of Olympians around, and the idea that you dedicate yourself for years basically to peak in one event for one chance at that is, it's so different than basically anything else in sports. And the drama that comes from that, the heartache, the ecstasy, all that stuff is hard to match. So I do love the Olympics. I don't love, sometimes we go so over the top to try to build stories about. Sometimes I just want to watch the dang things and see the emotion on their faces. And when I get to do that, I'm really happy. I am a big fan of the Olympics, and I love track and field. So this is the week now that started. This is the week that I really enjoy.
Yeah, I think the 100-meter semifinal and final is supposed to be today. So we'll see for women's, that is. So we'll see Sha'Carri Richardson trying to get the gold there. So definitely try and lock in for that later today.
Yeah, fun. I mean, a great 100-meter race. There's not much like that in sports.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. Well, Dave, I know you're a busy man. Thank you so much for your time, and good luck on the call tonight. We look forward to hearing you.
Good luck to Kyle Harrison. Beat that, kid.
Thanks a lot, Dave.
Guys.
That's Dave Fleming joining us here on Saturdays with Evan Giddings and Sam Lubman on 95.7 The Game via the River Islands guest line. A lot of good stuff from Dave, and I'm glad you snuck that in towards the end because, look, he is a man of, he has an eclectic set of talents and an eclectic set of interests. Like, I, for example, can't wait to see Sha'Carri Richardson. I also can't wait to see Noah Lyles because there's just something, and we'll get back to the Giants in just a moment, but as an aside, there's something about watching the fastest person on the planet just burn for 100 meters. And it's something that goes back to your childhood, right, Sam? It's like, who's the fastest kid on the block? You're trying to race, whether it's to get dinner with your siblings. You're trying to race your friends in middle school. You're
trying to be king of the playground.
You're trying to be number one. It is something that everyone, no matter what age you are, I think can understand and appreciate.
Just run fast. There's something thrilling about
There's
that.
nothing else.
I remember this. For me, it goes back to in elementary school. I remember in recess, we had this little concrete track or whatever that we would run down, and just all the entire recess, that's what we'd be doing, is just running sprints to see who could be the fastest kid. And I don't remember where I ranked. I felt like I was definitely up there, but it's just
you remember it.
Something about running fast. It's just something aesthetically pleasing about it, and there's just something so matter of fact about the 100-meter dash. Like, the fastest man, the fastest woman alive. Like, for me, I'll never forget that 2008 gold medal race with Usain Bolt.
Oh my God.
Celebrating for the last 10 meters of it and still setting the world record. I just came across the 2012 100-meter race in the men's division the other day, and that was just such a stacked field. You had Bolt, you had Asafa Powell, you had Johan Blake representing Jamaica, Justin Gatlin and Tyson Gay for Team USA, and just five of the fastest men in the history of the planet. And of course, Usain Bolt, you're playing for second when you're racing against Usain Bolt. So I'm excited to see how Sha'Carri Richardson does it today. She was supposed to be there in 2021, but obviously wasn't able to go there. She got pinched for marijuana usage, which is unfortunate, but glad that that's not happening this time because she looks like such a dynamic racer. So very excited to see what she does today.
That was so messed up, by the way. Like, the reason when she explained the reason why she was using weed was to
go to her mom. Yeah. Mom passed.
Her mom passed away. She was depressed. So that was messed up. I'm glad that she's got an opportunity in front of the world to do it today. And Fleming also brought up the point that it's true. It's like you spend so many years training to peak for 10 seconds. Like you say, and someone like Usain Bolt, actually, I always found fascinating because the 100-meter dash wasn't even his best event.
No, he was a big 200-meter guy, wasn't he? 200,
400, I think he even ran the 800. So like Usain, and he also ran relays. I mean, the Jamaican team was just stupid. But to have someone like that can just do all these events, and it's kind of similar across sports. Like, spoiler alert, Simone Biles, I'll leave it there for a moment. Anybody who's listening that wants to watch later on today,
breaking news sounder,
can tune out. But no, she won again on the beam. So like Simone Biles is dominating different events in the world of gymnastics. That's what she does.
She did the vault this morning.
Exactly. So
another spoiler alert.
Well, yeah, but the vault is golden. Yeah. It's for her. She's the most decorated gymnast ever. Ledecky cleaning up as far as medals are concerned.
Another Stanford athlete.
Yeah, shout out to Flem. She won the 1500 a couple days ago by 10 seconds.
I love
just
that.
Lapping the field.
I love that little nugget by Dave. Yeah, when you go to Stanford, there's Olympians all over the place.
Well, of course,
that was the most water drop of water drops right there.
Oh, but he was also the voice of a lot of those teams, so he probably got to know a lot of them. Big thank you to Dave Fleming. By the way, of course, all guests on 95.7 The Game appear on the River Islands guest line. Isn't it time for you to discover the islands? River Islands in Lathrop. He also mentioned something about these young players I want to dig into. The idea of expectations, the idea of making a playoff push. A lot of these guys have not been there before. How much do you trust that the young players that have been empowered to the point of Tyler Fitzgerald, Marco Luciano now stepping in for Jorge Soler, how much confidence do you have that they can get it done? I have reasons for and against on the other side as we continue here on Saturdays on 95.7 The Game with Evan Giddings and Sam Lubman. We're back after this.
for 3, double, single, has knocked in one of the two Giants. Runs, and now he drives one. Deep left field. Gone! 3-0 Giants.
Live.
Well, what a skidding halt that was. No, so like that was an absolute tank. And of course, that was Dave Fleming on the call. He joined us a little bit earlier on the River Islands guest line. But Sam, look, the Giants are playing some good baseball. They're beating teams that they're supposed to beat. And I know Flem also mentioned the fact that you can't necessarily play the schedule game and just pencil in wins. The Giants are at the point where they don't really have a choice. You know, they do have their backs up against the wall. And if they are to make the postseason push that I think could be the reason why Farhan Zaidi is or is not around next season, it's going to start with performances like last night with Blake Snell. Not even the no-hitting part, but just the tone-setting part. Again, the first inning, striking out the side, looking unhittable, being overpowering. That has to be something that is more often than not. And it's going to come down to the pitching staff, I think. But also, this idea of younger players. That was the other thing that Dave kind of talked about. This idea of younger players being the ones that have to carry the offense. I mean, when I throw that to you, Sam, because I asked Dave about this, but I think we can get into it. You know, how much confidence do you have in these younger players that have not played meaningful September baseball and have not played, really much more than a full 1 or 2 minor league seasons?
I mean, I have some confidence. It's gonna be probably day to day. I mean, I do like how a lot of these guys play. I'm very high on Tyler Fitzgerald and just kind of what he can bring to the table, especially just that speed element that he brings there. Elliot Ramos, I mean, he's the dude in this lineup right now, for better or for worse. Is he a guy who can carry a lineup? I'm not sure about that, but this is how we're gonna find out. The guy who I think is gonna have amongst the young guys the biggest eye on him the rest of the way, though, it's going to be Marco Luciano. A big reason why the Giants moved off of Jorge Soler, they said, was they wanted to give at-bats to Luciano. And I give the Giants credit. They let Luciano hit, all 9 innings last night. On Tuesday night, they ruffled the feathers of a lot of Giants fans when they pinch hit Lamont Wade Jr. in for Marco Luciano in that 9th inning, which is like, are you trying to trust these guys or are you not? When you I get the matchups. We had Dave Fleming on the next day, and he kind of broke it down. You want careful with that mic stand there.
Easy.
You want, yeah. Hey, you didn't pull a Steiny at least.
No, simmer down
and rip it out. Or who was I think Spadoni? He one time ripped one of the arms out.
Steiny's done it too.
Yeah, Steiny's done it. It's a rite of passage. Yeah, usually Willard weakens it, and then one of us breaks it. But. Fleming, he kind of broke it down on Wednesday when we had him on the morning roast, why you would put Lamont Wade there. And I get the logic there. He's one of your better on base guys. You want that righty lefty matchup, blah, blah, blah. But the future of this organization is not going to be built on the back of Lamont Wade Jr. He's a fine player and all, but if you told me Lamont Wade Jr. isn't back on the Giants next year, I don't think I'm losing that much sleep over it. Marco Luciano, though, he is supposed to be part of this future. And so how much do we believe in Marco Luciano? Let's get start with how much the Giants believe in Marco Luciano. They opened up a spot for him to get at-bats. Let's let him get these at-bats. Let's let him get this work in. Let's let him take these lumps, because that's the only way you're going to get better, is by getting out there and getting those consistent at-bats, learning from your mistakes. And so it's going to start there. So can the Giants really kind of commit to, I know they want to make this push for the playoffs. I know they want to make that push to play those, meaningful September baseball games that Larry Bear loves so much. But this is part of the future. The worst thing I think that can happen this year, Evan, is the Giants make the playoffs on the backs of some of their veteran guys, but then you see guys like Chapman, Snell, Ray, opt out after this year. And I'm not saying that's a guarantee to happen right now. But if that happens, then you're coming back next year with a bunch of young guys that you still don't know what you have there. That's not a good situation for the Giants to be in. So, how much faith we're going to see. Keep them in the lineup, let them take their lumps. If it results in frustrating losses, well, I think then so be it. That's the situation you're in right now. See, I'm not sure how much faith I have in the younger players. I think they're good.
Ramos has obviously been a revelation this season. Fitzgerald is hitting the crap out of the baseball. Even someone like Schmidt, could run into one like he did last night. I think Luciano's a player I would love to see more of. And in a small sample size, he's given me no reason to believe that he can't be a serviceable big league hitter. But at the same time, the season itself is in the position it is, I think, because of the veterans. I need the veterans to play better. And if the veterans do, I do think there is a legitimate chance that they could shock people and get into October baseball. But it has to be because of the vets. I do feel like at some point we're going to see these younger players not necessarily physically break down, but there's a psychological toll that's taken over the course of time. And when you get deep into August, September, a lot of the good teams, Sam, I don't know what you think about this, but a lot of times the dog days, which are kind of upon us, right? They tend to impact the best teams as opposed to the worst teams. I think generally when, you're seeing the Phillies drop a lot of series, the Dodgers, who are banged up, are struggling right now. This is the time of year where those teams struggle before they get themselves right heading into September and get themselves prepared to play in October because they all expect to be there. This is the time where now, not that the Giants are bottom feeders, but they're about 500. This is a chance for them to gain some ground on those teams or even just some of the wild card teams ahead of them because these aren't the Giants' dog days. I don't think that this is the time where the Giants are going to, just hit a wall. But I'm afraid that wall will eventually come around the time where those playoff teams ahead of them have already gone through their struggles now in August. So it's kind of converse where the Giants are playing and look good, I think, right now. But what I'm afraid about with the young players is that when the Milwaukees, the San Diegos, the Arizonas, who they got coming up on the schedule in a couple of weeks, when those teams begin to get locked in, and some of them are playing good baseball now, but when they begin to get locked in and focused on their goal because they have vets that have been there and done that before, that's when I'm afraid that the younger players will falter. And so I do need to see more from Chapman. I'll throw Bailey in there because he's played a full season now, but I need more from even Conforto. I need more from the Yazes, the players that have been in these positions before and have played full seasons. I need those guys to carry more of a load than just expecting the young guys to prop them up.
No, I'd agree with that too. They are going to be a big part of it. And Chapman, he's been doing his part for the most part this year. The guy who I think it's the most pressure.
Lamont Wade too.
Lamont Wade too, yeah. I think the guy of that group that you just mentioned that has the most pressure to kind of step up amongst the veterans, it's Michael Conforto. He got off to a solid start in April, and you're thinking, all right, maybe he's kind of figured it out. He's been battling injuries the last few years, but he's healthy this year. But then that wasn't the case. He's missed some time. He's been inconsistent, and the Giants keep trotting him out there. They're trying to make this happen with him, and I'm just not seeing it right now lately. It'll come in flashes. It'll come in bursts, but for the year and a half that he's been here with this team, that's all it's been. It's a burst here, a flash there. It's nothing consistent. If the Giants are going to, take advantage of these dog days when the other teams are struggling, he's going to be a big part of it. Lamont Wade Jr. getting healthy, he's going to be a big part of it. You didn't mention Wilmer Flores there, which, right now with Wilmer Flores, it sounds like he's probably not going to be back for a long time. Flem mentioned it on Wednesday. We had him on that part of the Canha trade was acknowledging the reality that Wilmer Flores probably won't be back this year.
I just assumed he's not going to be a big part of this,
which is unfortunate. And honestly, he wasn't really much of a factor this year. And I've been kind of harsh on Wilmer Flores this time here. He's been an okay Giant during his time here. I mean, he was one of their better players last year, but that team wasn't very good last year. So I mean, what's the bar here? But what
team hasn't been good for the last 6 years?
So it's like when you're saying, he's the best player on a bad Giants team. What's that? Like Gorkys Hernandez was a great player on that 2017 Giants team. No one remembers Gorkys Hernandez fondly. Most people don't remember who he is.
Ken doesn't know who Gorkys Hernandez is at all.
But he was a guy who was just like once upon a time. Oh, here comes a thump. It's Gorkys Hernandez.
Great name.
It is it's just a fun name to say, Gorkys Hernandez. That's why I like to bring him up for a lot, just to say the name. But I think one thing that you talk about the pressure on the young guys though, and one thing now that I think we're going to see though is could the pitching kind of take some of that pressure off when you don't need to put 5, 6, 7 runs on the board because you have a pitching rotation that can hold your opponent to 2 or 3 runs, that kind of takes the pressure off. And I think one thing that's kind of helped augment what the hitters are doing is the fact that outside of Logan Webb, Evan, most of the Giants pitchers in this rotation haven't, I mean, Hayden Birdsong also, but most of these other pitchers haven't put a whole lot of innings on their arms yet this year. Robbie Ray's just coming back. Blake Snell's missed a lot of time, but he's looking locked in, and he hasn't put a whole lot of innings on his arm. Kyle Harrison will be interesting to see kind of how his innings develop this year. But you got a group of starting pitchers that, for the most part, is as fresh as you could want them here going into this stretch drive here in August and September, where, a lot of these other, teams, these big boy teams, the Phillies or, the Guardians, the Dodgers. I mean, maybe not the Guardians because it's in a different league, but, they're putting a lot more wear and tear on their pitching rotation. So the dog days, it can affect the hitters, but it can have a massive effect on the pitchers too, especially with a lot of these teams playing in this hot weather they're going to be dealing with here in August.
No, but that's also why a team like Cleveland will go out and trade for an Alex Cobb.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they're going out and getting a frontline starter for October. Although he might be a game 3 pitcher potentially if he looks good.
Game 4, yeah,
game 3, game 4, he can help you out. But it's to basically take off some of the wear and tear of that rotation to give them some help. Really the biggest frontline starter that was dealt is pitching tonight at the Coliseum, and that's Jack Flaherty to the Los Angeles Dodgers. That's a guy that the Dodgers are, I guess, in a kind of a different situation because their pitching staff has just been bedridden by injuries. I mean,
they have a very similar pitching staff as the Giants.
Yeah,
in terms of just availability.
And we don't even know if the guys that are coming back and getting healthy are productive anymore. Clayton Kershaw had his first start in his career the other night where he didn't strike out a batter and just got shelled by the Padres. So
that's happens when you're not pitching against the Giants.
The only dude that they really can, I think, hope and depend on coming back and being productive would be Yamamoto. Glasnow's serviceable. Flaherty gives you some pizzazz. But the other big name starter would be someone like Yusei Kikuchi, who had a fantastic first start with the Houston Astros, but if he's starting game 1 or 2, which I don't think he would for the Astros, but that's not a great sign. So the pitchers that were moved at the deadline, to me, there was no big name talent in the starting market that is going to impact October outside of helping you get there and maybe having a game or two, a performance basically that's unexpected.
Well, it gives you a little bit more depth. Like a guy like I think Eric Fetty, who went to the Cardinals there.
He's had a really good year.
Yeah, he's pitching very well for the White Sox this year, which is, if he had some run support, I'm sure his record would look a lot better. But anytime you're doing anything good on the White Sox, that's pretty impressive.
His ERA is good.
Yeah, I think it's like a 3.3 ERA somewhere in that area. But that's the kind of start. When we had Dave on Wednesday, I'm mentioning that interview a lot. He kind of said, when these teams are game 3 starters, that's something to kind of keep an eye on. Because when you got a team like the Orioles that, if they're trotting out, Johnny No Name in game 3 because they didn't want to pony up and add some bigger pitching depth at the deadline, it's going to come back to bite them in the butt at that point. So, but a guy like an Eric Fetty, a Jack Flaherty, that's great for, extending the depth of your pitching rotation for when you do get to the playoffs. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But bringing it back to the Giants, though, who have the pitching depth already, it is just more on the offense and what it brings. I think this is going to be a big test also for Elliot Ramos as well, because as we've mentioned, teams are starting to adjust to him a little bit. They're starting to hit him with that high stuff there, which he does struggle with. This is where we're going to really find out who Elliot Ramos is in these next 2 months. You came up, you lit the league on fire. The league adjusted to you. Now it's your turn to adjust to the adjustment. If he can pull that off, well, now you're feeling a lot better about this team's chances and about Elliot Ramos' future with this team.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, Ramos, in the last week hasn't performed very well. But, if I told you over the course of July, he, 280 with an 800 OPS, 5 home runs, 16 driven in, that is something that you will take. The issue is that I think the Giants are a bit dependent, or have been until Fitzgerald started hitting like Roger Hornsby, that the offense is going to go as Ramos goes. And that to me is a little bit too much to expect of a 24-year-old number one, but a guy that doesn't, to me, profile as a future middle-of-the-order bat. It's not like the Giants are throwing Ramos into the heart of the order because they expect it to be Julio Rodriguez, or some other young stud. It's because they don't have a choice. And that's where I think he's been exposed a little bit as of late. But at the same time, that's also where I don't know if we'll find out who Ramos is, but I think we'll find out more about his character and how he's able to fight through at-bats, because I think no matter what, he's going to be in disadvantageous positions. Pitchers are going to give him their best stuff. He's going to be pitched around. He's going to be on the scouting report. He's the guy that opposing pitchers are trying to get out more than anybody else in that lineup because of his sustained success so far this season. So how is he able to battle through that? If he's hitting 260 the rest of the way, I know that's not as sexy as the 300 average and the 1,000 OPS he had in June, which got him to the All-Star game, but that to me is an example of growth, and that's an example of a young player that is not going to falter in the biggest moments and is not going to, I should say, wear down, because that's my biggest concern about the younger players. It's that they're going to wear down in September because they've never played this deep into a season before, and they've never played more important baseball in their lives.
Yeah. And that's why I think a part of it, and well, first off, 260 these days, that's pretty good in these days of Major League Baseball. But
if you're hitting the ball to the yard.
Yeah. But I think these days, this is where I think it kind of becomes a win-win situation for Elliot Ramos, because when it comes to growth, it's not so much about succeeding. It is more about just, are you getting better? If you succeed, that's great. But if you fail, how do you get better from that? And what I think these next couple months, even if the Giants do fall short here, let's say they do run out of gas in September, or the moment gets too big for them, well, okay, now you know how that feels. So that means next year, when the stakes are maybe a little bit higher, when the expectations to make the playoffs are a little bit greater, you have that experience of what it's like to, handle that postseason run. I'll make a comp, to the Warriors. You go back to 2013 when they had that series against the Spurs. And you always talk about, in the NBA playoffs, it's very hard to learn how to close out games. And they had that game one against the Spurs where they completely fell apart in the fourth quarter and gave it up in overtime. That was a learning experience for the Warriors. They learned how important it is to be able to close out playoff games. It's going to be a somewhat of a similar situation here for this young Giants team here. They're going to have to learn how you close out basically a regular season. And if they fail, well, all right. How do you, it's like Master Yoda said in episode 8, the greatest teacher failure is. So we'll see how it comes together there for the Giants and for these young guys. So if they take it and they run with it, awesome. If they don't let it be for nothing.
It's Farhan Yoda then?
Well, let's not go that far. He might be more of like a Kiadi Mundi or something.
Yeah, he wishes. No, I think that's a fair point, though. But again, that's why I feel like, and I've always felt that the season was going to be dictated by the veteran players, or driven home by the veteran players, and it feels like they've been propped up for much of this season by some of the younger guys on the team. That's where this is your time. The pitching staff is starting to round into form, whereas the injuries, some of the subpar production, that appears to be behind them. I'm talking specifically about Snell, Ray, who's back, and then even Webb, who I guess had kind of a down July. Should
a bit of a hiccup.
Yeah, a little bit of a hiccup in July. Those three dudes, they got to help now Kyle Harrison and Hayden Birdsong. Because you did trade away. I know we talk about the depth, and yes, they have I think a talented starting five. I don't know about the best in baseball, but at least the last two games are pitching like it. They've been the best in baseball. But you traded away any sort of starting pitching depth beyond that because Alex Cobb is no longer here. And maybe they didn't feel like they wanted to wait to, see and rev him up, and he's going 4 innings, and you didn't want multiple guys on the injury back track because the other one is Robbie Ray. You need guys that are going to give you innings now. Kyle Harrison, you hope, can give you innings tonight in Cincinnati, Birdsong tomorrow, and so on and so forth. So, but I do think that Webb and Snell are well equipped to help prop up and take the baton from the younger players, which have carried the starting rotation for much of this season. I need to see the position players do it. I need to see those guys deliver more runs because although I do feel confident in the pitching, and it does appear like they're beginning to turn a little bit of a corner. We'll see if they can get to 500 tonight. But at the same time, this is a lineup that right now, to me, has, as we've described, a lot of gravy players. If they give you something offensively, that's a plus. But it's not an offense that I feel confident, Sam, if an opposing team gets to the starting pitcher, if they score 4 or 5 runs, I don't feel confident that this offense is going to be able to overcome that more often than not. if an opposing team scores 5 runs, I almost feel like the game is lost.
Oh, that is ball game, yeah. What I think these last 2 months are going to feel like is, for the Giants, it's going to feel a lot like what those last couple months of the 2011 season was like. Giants fans, you know damn well how frustrating that run was when, you had no offense, you had a great pitching rotation, but it felt like, anytime a team goes up 2-0 on you, like, oh, that's ball game. The only difference between that season and this season is, in 2011, you had, the nice warm fuzzy memories of that, postseason run to kind of keep you company during those cold 1-0 games. You don't have that this year, but yeah, it's going to be a lot of that. There's going to be a lot of the times when, if the starting pitcher gives it up, 1-2 runs in that first inning, it's going to be like, oh man, this is a massive mountain we have to climb up here. We got to get a run and then a whole run on top of that, and then a third run? You want 3 runs from us tonight? That you are asking, wait. It's going to be a lot of that the next 2 months. If they could get 7 runs in a game, that would be incredible. But you were talking about, position players who we're going to have an eye on here, as we also partly have an eye on the 100-meter dash trials here at the Olympics going on. It's Patrick Bailey. And the second half of last year, you talk about fading away. He faded away in the second half of last year. And I remember chatting with him about that last year, and he said basically, the grind of the baseball season kind of got to him a little bit. It's harder to find, time to get your conditioning in, time to find your workouts in. It's hard to get that done during the season when you're also, trying to prep for games. When you're a catcher, you got to basically memorize, where are the weak spots in the strike zone for every hitter that you're going to be facing in a given game. So I think that kind of wore down on him last year. So for Bailey, it's going to be very incumbent on him these next 2 months to avoid that kind of second half letdown that he had last year. Just last year, in July of last year, he had 165. He picked up in August a little bit. He hit 2 home runs, hit 257 in August. But then in September, he hit a wall and a half. 121 average, 164 on base, 22 strikeouts that month, only 3 walks. And you could tell he was gassed at the end of the year last year. So it's going to be a lot of eyes on Patrick Bailey here the last couple months as he guides this rotation and, tries to keep himself fresh enough to stay in the lineup every day.
But that's why he also had that amazing June. He's basically like the Ramos of last year. He was the young player that kind of emerged and popped that everyone was excited about. And then
the Buster Posey comps,
you kind of hit a wall. Yeah, that's what naturally happened. So
188 in the second half last year.
That's what I'm afraid, not to that extent, but to some extent, a Ramos or even if Fitzgerald to some extent. I know he hasn't played a ton of major league games, but he's played a lot of minor league games this season, and that together all builds. So the guys that have been there, and that's why I've been happy about the durability of Matt Chapman, though his offense has not been, I guess, what you'd necessarily envision when you signed him. I think he's been good, not great, but the durability has been a plus from him. Conforto's got to stop swinging a broomstick. There are players that have been in these situations that have played full seasons before that have to be able to help you when I think inevitably someone like Ramos, for example, or even Fitzgerald stops hitting the way that they've been hitting. And we've seen the way that Ramos has come down a little bit. I think Fitzgerald is a player that will naturally regress to the mean. So other players have to step up. And that's where I'm worried about the offense far more than the pitching staff, because it also means that the pitching staff is going to have to do a little bit more. And those guys like Kyle Harrison, Hayden Birdsong are also younger players that have not pitched this deep into seasons before and have not accumulated the amount of innings that they have before to this point in their careers. I think Kyle Harrison has looked really good, and he's been steady. He's been relatively durable this season. But how does he look into August and September starting tonight in Cincinnati? How does Hayden Birdsong, once he approaches his innings limit, is that a guy that the Giants choose to shut down? Do they try to just string him out a little bit more? Do they piggyback? Do they use him kind of just as a 2 through 6 innings guy, and do they help him try and prop him up with an opener? There are a lot of different strategies that they can use to help the younger guys, but again, it's going to be on their veterans to determine the rest of the season, in my opinion. All right, on the other side, I do want to transition, Sam, to the gridiron because we got a little bit of news about a wide receiver, not named Brandon Aiyuk, but it could impact Brandon Aiyuk, who has been out at training camp. He's still holding in, but he was at practice. All the social media videos are making the rounds.
The handshake heard around the world.
What is the interpretation? We'll have that for you on the other side. Kyle Shanahan also spoke about it yesterday. I look forward to getting into that. Evan Giddings and Sam Lubman back after this on Saturdays on 95.7 The Game.
Now back to 95.7 The Game.
All right, this is Saturdays on 95.7 The Game. Evan Giddings, Sam Lubman, Ken Luttrell with you here. One more hour, Sam. And look, we spent a lot of time with the San Francisco Giants. We're joined on the River Islands guest line earlier by the TV voice of the Giants, Dave Fleming. Fantastic conversation. You can go check out on any of our podcast page or rewind using the Odyssey app. But I do want to shift to the gridiron for a moment because we have a piece of news that is, pretty significant in the football world because it does make the newest, highest paid receiver, Tyreek Hill, in terms of fully guaranteed money. So this is from Adam Schefter of ESPN. Wide receiver Tyreek Hill and the Dolphins, Ken's favorite team, by the way, reached an agreement on a restructured contract worth $90 million over the next 3 years that includes 65 guaranteed. This brings the 4-year total of fully guaranteed money to $106.5 million, the most ever for any receiver. No new years were added to the deal. And, of course, the deal was negotiated by Drew Rosenhaus and Jason Rosenhaus, Tyreek Hill's agents. But now Tyreek Hill's under contract through 2026. Jalen Waddle is under contract through 2028. And Tua Tagovailoa, who they also inked to a big contract for 4 years, is under contract through 2028. So the Dolphins have locked in their biggest 3 offensive weapons, and the Niners have yet to ink potentially, their 3rd or 4th biggest offensive weapon in Brandon Aiyuk because he still doesn't have a contract. I don't know how much the Tyreek Hill deal impacts Aiyuk, but it's just another wide receiver getting paid.
Yeah, so it's $106 million over the next 4 years. So if I do some rough math, so 28 million a year, roughly in that area. So, which is
a fully guaranteed money.
A fully guaranteed. Okay. Still, that's still a lot of money there. Yeah, Tyreek Hill. Just rated the number 1 player in the NFL right now
by his peers.
Yes. So Tyreek Hill, he's probably in that Justin Jefferson era category of receivers who are better than Brandon Aiyuk.
Just below.
So we'll see. It'd be interesting to see how that does impact it. But I'm kind of curious though. Yesterday, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch were dapping each other up. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch were dapping Brandon Aiyuk up. On the practice field. I'm curious how much that matters in terms of getting the Brandon Aiyuk deal done. Is that a sign that they're close? Is that a sign that they're farther away? I would assume that it's not that, but it was the handshake heard around the world yesterday as far as 49ers fans are concerned.
Well, here's what the head coach of the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan, had to say on the bro hug.
I had a very enthusiastic hug with Brandon Aiyuk yesterday, and it got national media attention because it signaled something. What did that signal?
This is usually how we greet each other, honestly. You guys would see maybe a lot more hugs if we had it filmed for you guys, but we're not on Hard Knocks, so it's the only one on the field. You haven't been on the field a lot, and we walk by each other, and it's usually how we greet each other. Bro hug, nothing more, nothing less.
Where things stand with that? Is it still stalemate? Any progress?
Yeah, no updates. Same with Trent.
No updates, but we did get a bro hug. They're bros, Sam.
Yeah, who amongst us hasn't bro hugged our boss? I bro hug Nahigian all the time. That's a lie. I don't.
During negotiations for a new contract?
Oh, absolutely. That's how we know that the negotiations are indeed happening. It's you sit down. All right, let's kick these negotiations off with a bro hug, and he's like, "All right, look at this one. Here we go." And then we bro hug, and then we're off. Then we're off to the races.
Yeah, I read it in a positive fashion. I know some people have had different interpretations of the hug. Larry Krueger was
sensation.
Yeah, exactly. Larry Krueger was on with Willard and Dibbs a couple days ago and said that he felt like Brandon Aiyuk is going to be traded if he had to really read into it. There's been people that have seen it as like a goodbye hug. I don't know, Sam. To me, someone doesn't look that happy. And also, I don't think Kyle Shanahan sounds the way that he sounds at the press conference discussing it. Now, he doesn't have updates on the contract, but I don't feel like he is as, just kind of open and jovial and just easygoing about it, unless he feels like there's a pretty good chance that Aiyuk is going to be around for a while. Not that players and coaches wouldn't dap each other up if, maybe he was out the door, but I just don't get, I'm reading the vibes in the room right now, Sam, and the vibes are good in Santa Clara, and that's why I think the vibes are also good with Brandon Aiyuk. I think it's just a matter of time until he gets his deal.
Yeah, and I think the fact that he's there is very much a good thing. I mean, this is coming, 2 weeks after he said, trade me, where he, officially requested that, to be traded to another team. But then he still shows up. He still is in good spirits. We had Matt Barrows on the other day, and he basically said that Brandon Aiyuk's been doing everything at training camp other than actually participating in the practices. He's going to the team meetings. He's in the film sessions. He's around the team. We saw him at camp. Obviously, he's walking on the sideline with John Lynch before practice, before getting in the golf cart and being shuttled off to who knows where. To me, that just shows me that, that if whatever negotiations are going on, and I know Aiyuk, he said he's taking it personal, and how these negotiations go, that just tells me that for the most part, it feels like that negotiations are at least pleasant. Let's just go with that. They're not contentious. They're not hostile. They're would appear to be a sense among those in Niner land that this will have a happy ending. It's just a matter of what the number looks like. It was a similar situation with Nick Bosa last year where I don't think anyone really anticipated things going super south with Nick Bosa. Like, I don't think there was ever a fear that he was going to get traded or they're going to move off of him. We went through this with Debo in 2022 where, he deleted the Niners from his socials, but again, it never felt like there was ever a serious effort to trade him. So they're in good spirits. They're getting along. They're all happy to be there. I got to have a feeling that if Brandon Aiyuk really wanted out of the Niners, he wouldn't be at training camp acting as happy as he has been.
No, but I also think, and look, I think it's interesting that Tyreek Hill gets the money that he does today because that was something that kind of was, I don't know, stirring in my mind yesterday. This idea that I think that if the 49ers could receive a haul that Tyreek Hill fetched the Kansas City Chiefs, that they would trade Brandon Aiyuk. I do think part of it is the value of Aiyuk is far more to the 49ers being on the team than as a trade chip. And not just because his absence would make them worse. Like, I think if they could get first-round picks for Brandon Aiyuk, I do think they would trade him. And I think it would help them now because they save some money, and it would help them in the future, obviously, with some capital that they would recoup. But I just don't think that any team is willing to give up probably even a first-round pick at this point for an Aiyuk, and I would not trade him for anything less than a first-round pick. So I think that's where the Niners are a bit stuck, but they also feel comfortable enough with paying him, and the market has clarified enough to the point where I think that we finally have found, I don't want to count someone's pockets, but I feel like we have found the floor for Brandon Aiyuk, and I think that's about $27.5 million. I think that's the DJ Moore deal.
Yeah.
To me, that would be the floor, and probably at this point, I would imagine it's just ironing out some of the details. There's also a ceiling, which is Amon-Ra, and I think that ceiling has always been there. But this past week, we've established what the price floor is for Brandon Aiyuk, and I think that's important for both sides.
Yeah, I do think, I would have thought that going into this offseason, that 27, 28 range, that's about where I would have thought that Aiyuk would come in on annually. It's basically, I think Debo's making $28 million a year too, right? Is that?
I think Debo's a little bit lower towards 20. This year it might be 26, but he was, 3 for 72? Something like that.
So he's in that same area. I kind of envisioned Aiyuk kind of coming in around that same area as well. That 27, 28 million. Well, first off, let me just address the trade thing. I feel like if you did trade him, yes, you do get, maybe you get a first round pick. Maybe you get 2 first round picks. You get
Debo's cap hit this year is 28.
Okay. So maybe you trade Aiyuk. Maybe you get a first round pick for next year. Maybe you can get a first round pick for the year after that. That would be pretty cool. What's that tell you about this year's team, though? This is, like last year we were saying it's Super Bowl or bust. Some of us were saying Super Bowl or try again. I was in that camp. I know Willard was in that camp. I think we might have been the only 2 people in that camp. But when you look at the team this year, this is absolutely a team that, if you strip away all of, the outside nonsense, the fact that they just lost the Super Bowl, this is a team that, if you plug it all into Madden, looks like a team that will be playing in the Super Bowl right now. But if you do move off Brandon Aiyuk, that message that you're saying is basically we're punting on this season, and now it's all about what the next core of this 49ers team will look like as they try to build it around Brock Purdy. I don't think you can afford to trade Brandon Aiyuk. I don't care if it's for draft pick, if it's for draft picks, if it's for draft picks for many, many years to come. If the goal is to win a Super Bowl, you need to have Brandon Aiyuk on this team to do it. If you move off of him, that's basically saying that's not in the cards anymore. I just don't think the Niners can afford to do that right now with how this roster is constructed, how close they got last year, and really just how good of a chance they have this year. If they don't win it this year, it will because something colossally disappointing happened. But if you take away Brandon Aiyuk, I think you take this team out of the Super Bowl contender tier, which is probably them and the Chiefs. And I don't know how you feel about the Bills and Ravens. Maybe they're in there too. But I think then you kind of knock them out to that next level of like, you're the team that, the conference champion beats on the way to the Super Bowl. And
I would push back a little bit. I mean, I think that Aiyuk is obviously important to this team, and they would not operate, at least out of the gates offensively, at an optimal level without him. But I would not take them out of the Super Bowl contender category if Aiyuk was not on this team. I still think he will be a part of this team, but I think it's more because, again, he's worth more to the Niners than what the draft, I think that the assets that will be coming back are worth. Like if the 49ers could trade Brandon Aiyuk right now for a first-round pick and a third-round pick, I would consider that.
Yeah, I mean, that would help you out for the future. I mean, depending on obviously who you trade him. Let's say it's Washington, just because I think that's the team that he's been connected to the most. Washington, they're probably going to be, a top 10 pick next year. Maybe it's in, the 10 to 15 range if, they get really hot later on, but they're probably a top 10 pick. That does help them out. I'm not quite sure who the best receivers in next year's draft are right now. I haven't looked that far ahead yet. And that would certainly help the Niners out because we all know that, we know that the Niners can't afford everybody this year. Right now, this year, they can't afford to give Brandon Aiyuk what he wants. They can't afford to give Trent Williams what he wants. The reason they're kind of being a little bit chummy with the money here is that they're looking for, they're looking beyond next year because they know that they got that big fat payday to Brock Purdy that's coming that, Bill Barnwell of ESPN projected could be north of $300 million. I think the number he had was 325, which is just a ridiculous number to think about for a quarterback. But then you see the deals that Tua got, the deal that Jordan Love got, and you start to realize, like, oh man, that $300 million deal is becoming more and more realistic with every passing day. And if Brock does go out and build on the season he had last year, it gets a lot harder to not give him that money. So I understand that they're looking there, but you have that. Those are decisions to have to make next offseason. Like, I get wanting to be prudent and wanting to set yourself up so those decisions next year are a little bit easier. But right now, this is your last chance, Paulie, to really win a Super Bowl with this core. Because if you fall short, there will be changes. George Kittle, he's 30, 31 now. On the north side of 30, the clock is kind of ticking on how long he can be serviceable. Deebo Samuel, I think he would probably be the cap casualty if the Niners did sign Aiyuk and had to make some cutbacks next year. That's just my thought looking at it. The other side of the Deebo coin is that we've seen how he plays. He plays very physical, very aggressive. He loves running into dudes. We saw that in the receiver doc. How much wear and tear can that body take up? So this year you have the window. You have to maximize it at all costs, I think, and deal with the future when the future gets here.
Yeah, but if you don't have an eye on the future, then the future can bite you in the ass. And what I mean by that is if you choose to pay Brandon Aiyuk a lot of money, and again, I think they will, they're going to have some really tough choices to make at other positions. For example, these guys are set to hit free agency next offseason. Charvarius Ward, Diamador Lenore, Aaron Banks, Talanoa Hufanga, and Dre Greenlaw. Those are all starting caliber players, and a couple of them have been all pros. Mm-hmm. So not to say that if you sign Aiyuk, you can't retain all those guys.
It gets harder. Absolutely.
It becomes significantly harder because those players are not going to command $28 million a year like Aiyuk probably is, or around $28 million. So you're going to have to make choices. Another guy's Elijah Mitchell. I didn't throw him in there because I feel like he's probably the most replaceable of the bunch.
I don't think he's getting a reset the market deal now.
No, he's also replaceable. is kind of at that position as well as in that stage of his career. Yeah, but that's what the Niners are looking at. And so I think they're trying to figure out and why they might be penny pinching a little bit, both with Brandon Aiyuk as well as Trent Williams, a name we haven't brought up much yet, is because they're trying to allocate some future funds to these players that are younger, that ideally will get better and will help create the new core of 49ers, because I'm with you. I don't think they can keep this entire group together. You know, the amount of players on the top 100 list, even if someone like Deebo Samuel, who the players vote on this list, the players told us that Deebo Samuel is seen around the league as better than Brandon Aiyuk. I think Deebo was in the 30s, or if not number 30, and Aiyuk was number 66. So we can believe that Aiyuk is a better receiver all we want. The players themselves are telling us that Deebo is more important to the San Francisco 49ers than Brandon Aiyuk is. But my fear, Sam, is that, yes, you do have to maximize this year, and you have to think about the rest of Brock Purdy's rookie contract, but you also have to consider what you're not going to be able to put around him on both sides of the football if you just continue to hand out contracts. Like that I think would be the biggest reason why I would consider trading Aiyuk at this point, and why I've thought that's a possibility, is because if you're telling me I have to pay Aiyuk, but I lose 3 future starters at other positions, that's a lot to give up.
Deebo, I think on top 100, came in at number 30. Brandon Aiyuk was at number 66. So just to clear that up. No, I mean, I see the logic there, but the way I look at it is like, you're probably taking a step back regardless of what next year. You're probably taking a step back regardless of what happens this year. You know, whether you fall short of the playoffs, whether you fall short of the Super Bowl, whether you win the Super Bowl, you will be taking a step back next year because, as we've said numerous times, guys are going to become expensive. They're going to have to move off of guys. Someone's going to have to get traded. Someone's going to have to hit free agency. You're not going to have to rebuild. The Niners aren't going into a rebuild anytime soon. But you are going to have to go into a reload here. It is very hard to maintain this level of success in the NFL. I think it was, they're kind of caught in the situation that DJ Khaled once coined. You know, they're suffering from success, whereas just these guys are so expensive that they're going to have to make these incredibly difficult conversations. That's a weekday one. So that's why I kind of like, you're taking the step back regardless. So I feel like that kind of just ups the urgency to take advantage of the opportunity before you right now of just like, you know what, we need to go all in for this Super Bowl because, it's going to be a couple years before we see this team back at this level because they're going to have to kind of rebuild this or retool this thing. I don't want to say rebuild. They're going to have to retool and reload this thing around Brock Purdy. Now, the good news is they will have Brock Purdy. In the NFL, they always say if you have a quarterback, you have a chance. And the Niners very much do have a quarterback. Is he, an elite level quarterback in the way that Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes is? Time will tell. I don't know if he'll ever be Patrick Mahomes level.
Well, he's not as dynamic as those guys, but he can be as efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he is absolutely a good enough quarterback to lead a team to a Super Bowl victory. I think we have seen the fact that he basically had them seconds away from winning it. I mean, there was a couple plays in that overtime there where if the Niners make the stop, the Niners are Super Bowl champions. I mean, the Chiefs won on the last play of overtime. If that pass had gone incomplete or if the Niners had stopped too short of the goal line there, you would have had 0-0-0 on the clock there, and that's ball game. Niners win. I mean, they were pretty freaking close to winning it. And
they were, but so were the Philadelphia Eagles. And I would say that Jalen Hurts was far more of a reason why the Eagles were a field goal away from winning the Super Bowl 2 years ago than Brock Purdy was from the Niners losing in overtime last year.
Yeah, well, I think this gets in the conversation of if you do retool this team around Brock Purdy, I think we were talking, I think you and Guru yesterday, you guys talked about what the identity of this team is. I heard snippets of it, but you just kind of refresh, for the listeners maybe who didn't listen, who did miss it yesterday. How did you just define the identity of this team going into this year?
Continuity. Yeah, okay. I think that's the identity of this team. They have the most continuity, and Guru also brought up I think a good point, which is talent. That's their identity, and I think they have the most continuous talent in football, and that's not really debatable.
Yeah, but I don't think this is a team that you look at this team right now and say they're a team that's built around the success of their quarterback. I don't think, and I'm not saying that as a knock on Brock. No, not yet. And that's where, the whole, do you think Brock can take that next step this year comes into play, which I don't think is talked about enough. in terms of just like, I feel like you ask some people and they would say that, yep, we saw the best of Brock Purdy last year. Like that was the peak. It'll never be that good again. And I kind of refute that because, like, why does it have to be that way? He's coming in with a full off season of work right now. He's in much better shape than last year. We've seen how smart he is in terms of just operating and commanding Kyle Shanahan's offense. He was on the TK show, earlier this week, kind of talking about how his next goal is he wants to kind of get that freedom to kind of change things up a little bit at the line of scrimmage, which would be a massive step for Kyle Shanahan to allow a quarterback to do that.
Yeah, it would.
If Brock can reach that level, then I think you're feeling, oh, okay, this is a guy who actually maybe we can really retool this roster around going forward, because this just my guess right now is if you were to kind of truth serum a lot of 49ers fans and ask them, how confident are you in this team if Brock Purdy was the foundation of it and not a collection of guys like Debo and Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey, I'm not sure there would be a universal belief that Brock can be the absolute pillar of this 49ers organization going forward.
Why do you think that, though?
I wonder if there's just there's the game manager label that is still stuck with him. And I do like how with Kawakami, he kind of flipped that as a positive, saying basically it's like, well, yeah, if you can operate this system, you're a pretty dynamic quarterback. I think part of it's that. I think a lot of part of it is just people still look at him and see pick 262. They still see Mr. Irrelevant. They're still waiting for him to come crashing back down to earth. They point at, the struggles in the rain against Cleveland and against Green Bay. They point at, the absolutely abysmal night he had on Christmas when, he put lumps of coal in everybody's stocking. Not
mine. I actually made a lot of money on the Ravens that night.
Oh, look at you coming in big.
Yeah.
Santa hooked you up.
He did.
So it's, there's this group. It's just where we're at as fans, where we love to really just focus so much more on the negative things that happen. Because I feel like we make such a big deal about, what happened in Cleveland, what happened in Minnesota, what happened in Baltimore, the ugly game. I don't know if ugly, just the lackluster game he had against Washington. But he still had so many other great dynamic performances last year throughout the year. I mean, this is a guy when things were clicking, it was an easy 30 points per game. And so when I look at Brock, I see a guy who he's getting better every single time almost he takes the field. He's got the full off season under his belt. He's got all the mentals that you want in a great quarterback. We'll see how much better he looks this year. Even if he doesn't put up the same numbers, the same passing yards or whatever this year, the eyeball test will tell us a lot about how much we could trust Brock Purdy as the pillar foundation of this 49ers offense going forward. I have faith in him. I love to see, hopefully, we'll see that faith kind of grow within the 49ers faithful this year.
Well, let me ask you this, and I guess, this is kind of just a quick conversation, which we can continue on the other side. Do you think Patrick Mahomes is a better quarterback 7 years into the league than he was in his first full season as starter?
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, because he's never had a better statistical season than his first full season as starter.
Well, I think a part of it also, I think just the more you play against
I would agree,
these teams,
by the way. He is a better quarterback.
No, I agree. And I think a part of it is also, it's not just how you get physically better. It's not just about how you put up better stats and how far you throw the football. You get a better understanding of this league. Like, I think at the end, when the greatest of the greats, they don't just beat you through their ability. They beat you with their know-how. Like Peyton Manning at the end of his career, he was not the dynamic passer that he was in the prime of his career. But what he did have was, obviously, he had a great defense, but he also just had the intellect to know what the opposing defenses are going to throw at him, and he was smart enough to know how to use that knowledge to his advantage to kind of offset the physical deficiencies. I think that's how you're going to see Brock Purdy really kind of get better over these next few years as he becomes not just a better quarterback physically, statistically, he's become a better quarterback mentally.
Well, and I do want to see him take a leap. I believe he can, but I'll tell you why on the other side. That, to me, is the difference in where the Niners are and where they want to get to. If you have any concerns about something like Brandon Aiyuk or Trent Williams, if you feel like there's nothing to see here, if you feel like, I don't know, perhaps the Niners might be thinking more about the future, and that's the reason why Aiyuk is not under lock and key as of yet. We do want to hear from you at 888-957-9570. Also see people in the YouTube and Twitch chat. Shout out to you. Powered by First North Cal Credit Union. But Saturdays with Evan Giddings and Sam Lubman. We'll be back on the other side for our final segment, taking up until noon, right here on 95.7 The Game.
Now back to 95.7 The Game.
All right, one final segment here on Saturdays with Evan Giddings and Sam Lubman. Just like Sha'Carri Richardson, it's a sprint to the finish line. Sam, how we feeling?
We're going to be chucking up some good sports takes here in this last 30 minutes here as we watch these shot putters here chuck the rock some 60 meters. I mean, this is what I love about the Olympics, again, is you can get, into these sports that you rarely ever watch. You see the best in the world doing it, and there's just something fun. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm a shot put fan. I'm not locked in on shot put. You put a gun to my head and say, name 3 shot putters, just pull the trigger and get it over with. But you're still seeing the best of the best on the world stage, and there's just something awesome about seeing that level of competition. And right now at these shot putters, I'm watching just a bunch of people who look like Gregor the Mountain Clegane just chucking this, ball of rock down the field. And these are just some incredibly sized humans with a big old chalk stains on their neck, just absolute units of men. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't know about these guys. Like, all of them look, you're right, just like absolute mountain men, just people from hills. I feel like they all have built their houses from the ground up with their bare hands.
They push the trees over, yeah.
And that's just basically what their training is. Like, they don't actually lift weights. They cut wood, or I don't know, they carry and they forge just all these extremely awkward and heavy items in the hills of.
Say I'm sort of built for this.
Yeah, like in the hills of Finland or something.
That was a 22-meter shot right there.
From the Americans.
From Krauser.
It is funny, though. So we were at the cafeteria yesterday. Myself, Ken, shout out to Guru, and another one of our.
Cafeteria here in this building?
No.
Okay. Let's say there's a cafeteria here?
No, we don't have one of those kinds of cafeterias.
I didn't know we were that set up.
Yeah, well, we were having a pop, all right, an adult pop. And
it was International Beer Day yesterday.
I forget who brought this up. It's International Beer Day every day.
That is true.
I forget who brought this up, but someone, like, who Andrew Chafin is? Reliever. I think he just got
former
traded.
A's reliever?
Yeah, former A's reliever. He's pitched for a few teams, was on the Tigers.
He was looking for a boat.
Yeah, Ken brought this up. Okay, thank you. Andrew Chafin's favorite Olympic event is?
I don't know what it's called, but it's something with the skis and the rifle.
The biathlon.
Oh, the biathlon.
The biathlon. Love me a good biathlon.
Yeah, it's basically guys that cross-country ski, or women that cross-country ski, and then pull out their rifle and shoot things, little targets, not actual people or animals. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they shoot targets. And there's been memes that have been going around social media that I think are fascinating, because it's like these Bond villains. I don't know if the sporting event is pistol shooting, but the way that they have their glasses lined up, like these beautifully colored monocles that they have, like their shooting glasses, basically, and the way that they aim and kind of set up their gauge.
They have all sorts of equipment, too.
They look like James Bond villains.
The aesthetics is incredible on some of the shooters.
Don't miss.
Yeah, they got the rifle shooters. There's this one rifle shooter from China. Like, watching her do it, like, first off, the way they shoot these rifles, it's not like how we traditionally shoot rifles, where you have it on your shoulder and you're kind of looking down the barrel, directly down the barrel. They kind of are like holding the gun like sideways, like perpendicular to their chest, and they're kind of like looking down the barrel that way. And I'm doing a horrible job of describing it. So
I've never shot a gun, so I wouldn't know.
So these rifles in the Olympics, they kind of have them up against their chest, and then they kind of turn to look into it while it's still held up against their chest. It's just very different from how I was traditionally, taught how to shoot a rifle. And they do this really slow head turn. This one woman on the Chinese national team, it was just the coldest look on her face when she turns to look down the barrel, then, boom, right into the bullseye. And it's just like, that is just so incredible. None more incredible, though, than, I'm going to botch the name again, Yusuf Dikek of Turkey, who took silver in the pistol shooting. You better be careful. With, one hand in his pocket, just, bullseyeing these things one after another. And they asked him, how come you don't use any of the specialized equipment that all these other shooters are using? He's like, oh, I'm just a natural born shooter. Like, that's just such a cold line. And I didn't realize this. I think that was the first medal that Turkey has ever won in the Olympics. I don't know if it was ever, or maybe just this year. If it was just this year, it would make more sense. But shout out to him, man. He has become the viral star of these Olympics, which has had a lot of viral stars.
Yeah, natural born shooter, not natural born killer. Shout out Woody Harrelson. I think that a lot of these athletes, I don't know, do you have a favorite event? So I brought up Andrew Chafin because I also thought it was funny, Ken, that event that he named was not a summer Olympic sport. It's a winter Olympic sport.
Well, the reporter said, well, I asked you, I'm talking about the Olympics like going on now in the summer games. He goes, well, you didn't specify.
So Chafin's a big winter Olympics guy.
I like the winter stuff.
The Winter Olympics, I'll say is I'm more of a Winter Olympics guy than the Summer Olympics. But I mean, I'm an Olympics guy in general. You ask me what my favorite events are. I mean, the big ones, obviously, gymnastics, track, swimming. I'll leave those to the side. The one I really enjoy a lot, it's the kayaking slalom, where you kind of go down the little whitewater river in your kayak, and you got to, go forward through the green poles. Go backwards through the red poles. You see these guys with just this incredible core strength maneuvering these kayaks around these poles there. And just for me, I mean, I like kayaking a lot. I've been kayaking a lot in my life. And so to see it, on that stage, someone who's just really, really good at it, it's just something, again, just aesthetically pleasing to watch about the kayaking slalom for me.
Yeah, I do think in the summer for me, it's always the sprinters. Again, we talked about this, but just trying to figure out who the fastest person on planet Earth is, to me, is just the best event. It's the most, honestly, human event to me. And watching basketball is kind of fun. I guess it's fun seeing more so just the collection of talent on the court at one time, because the U.S. is looking pretty good. And
it's like the NBA All-Star Game, but with stakes.
Kicked the crap out of Puerto Rico earlier today as well. Sorry, spoiler alert. But yeah, I mean, I think in the winter for me, look, I really like the downhill slalom. Pretty much anything that's like extreme. I mean, half pipe.
Shout out Shaun White.
All the jumps I think are fantastic.
Hey Ev, what do you think about curling?
Actually, I love curling.
I love curling. Curling is
my favorite. That's extreme.
I think we all remember where we were in 2018 when what was in the 8th set, Team USA dropped that 4 spot on Canada to seal the gold medal. Do we all remember where we were for that one? Well, am I the only one?
Yeah, exactly.
Must have missed that.
Yeah, sorry, but
yeah, there we go. Sorry.
But I was just in Sweden, and curling is a big sport in Sweden. It is interesting though, like getting a little bit of the international lay of the land, because they care more about the Swedes, for example, than they do about teams. Like I went to a European football match, and they're fans, and they get kind of geographic alliances of the teams they like. But Swedish football is not, or soccer here in the States, is not as big as the Champions League. They don't often qualify. They kind of have to settle for Europa. Different smaller sort of tournaments. So they just absolutely fall in love with individual athletes. And it doesn't matter if they're in the Olympics, if they're competing. And I'll have the name in a sec, but there's a top golfer right now. He's like top 5 in the country. I think Ludwig is his name. And then, Ludwig is either his first or last name, but he's like the number 4 golfer in the world. Everyone in Sweden right now is starting to play golf because of this kid and just this meteoric rise over the past year. And so they have that sort of national pride. The U.S. has been so dominant, I think, in so many sports that it's hard for us to disassociate, the team aspect of things that we love, like the Niners, the Giants, or the Warriors, and just focus solely on an individual.
Yeah, it's actually pronounced Ludwig Åberg.
Oh, no, actually, that's Auerberg.
Looks like O on Google, but it could be wrong.
But it's the A with the O at the top, correct?
Yes.
Auerberg. Yeah.
Auerberg.
Yeah.
Anyway, good golfer.
I'm not even going to try to attempt to say it.
Food for thought.
There you go.
But I mean, I do think that it's a nice break every 4 years to just kind of lock in on a few individuals. But the individuals here in the Bay Area that are kind of stirring the pot, look, obviously Blake Snell threw a no-hitter last night, first in his career, 18th in franchise history. Brandon Aiyuk has been in everyone's sights, I think, trying to figure out when he's going to sign. But the guy that I think most people are interested in, and I've talked about this with Ken as well as Guru, to me, Sam, the most intriguing and interesting NFL athlete this season is going to be Brock Purdy.
I'd agree with that.
I think that he will stir the pot nationally, obviously locally, but all eyes are going to be on him in a way that I don't know if there's ever been on a quarterback, just because of the uniqueness of his situation, the contract everyone expects him to get, the amount of money that he's already made, obviously the underdog story that is pretty much only comparable to Kurt Warner, and the amount of success that he's already had to this point in his career.
No, I would agree with a lot of that. There's going to be a lot of eyes on Brock this year because what he does this year is going to have massive implications for the Niners going forward, not just on the field, but on that cap sheet. I remember we were talking to Phil Simms last month, and he thinks a big part of Brock's next contract will be determined by what he does this year, which I thought was kind of interesting because, I mean, you got Jed York, say it back in February, whether you could say it was wise of him to say that or not is up for debate. When he said, we're going to get Brock a reset the market deal, I thought it meant like, oh, wow, so it's just it feels like it's almost set in stone. It's just, it's a formality now, but Brock still has to go out and play the games this year, so there will be a massive scrutiny on him. Every interception he throws, is that taking money off the deal? Every touchdown he throws, there's that, guaranteeing that $300 million contract more. It kind of got buried in the shuffle this week. The Giants kind of gave Brock some cover here, but he was getting picked off a lot at the beginning of the week in practice. I think it was, 7 interceptions over a 2-day span on Monday and Tuesday this week?
Yes, he did. You want to hear Kyle Shanahan talk about it?
Yeah, I'm sure he'll have something good to say about it.
Here was his comment yesterday on Purdy's interceptions.
Always stats are made a big deal in practice, and I know that'll stick out too. And, we never won a lot of picks in practice, regardless of who it is. But, Brock's never really had an interception problem. He's protected the ball pretty well in this league for his 2 years, and he also isn't scared to let it rip too. When you're in practice, if we were really trying to fix that, and if he had a problem, and you come out and that's all we're focusing on, and he still has some stats like that, then that's something that concerns you. But that's something I really haven't been worried about with Brock on, and that's why those stats are also something that hasn't bothered me at all.
Not at all.
He's not bothered by it. He does have a point. Brock pretty solid at protecting the ball. He's got a 2.4 interception ratio in 2022, 2.5 last year. A lot of those interceptions, they kind of came in bunches too. Obviously, there's the 4 against the Ravens. He had a couple against the Vikings there of the 11 interceptions he threw last year. But I remember last year, a lot of the interceptions he threw were on plays where it's almost like he was trying to do too much. He was trying to play hero ball. He was trying to force the ball into windows that were, into tight windows that he maybe didn't need to do that in. And, I was saying in the last segment, Evan, that I think one of the big attributes of Brock that we're really going to see kind of grow over the next couple of years is that mentality. It's what he has going on between the ears. He is a very smart football player. And as he plays more reps in this league, because again, he's going to be 20, he's going into his age 25 season. He's still a young quarterback. He's still growing and learning. The more that he does that, though, I think you're going to start to see him realize, like, I don't need to force plays, all the time. I can, maybe take a more conservative pass that will get less yards that will, maybe we don't get that first down, but at least keeps the ball in our possession. Or maybe he uses his legs a little bit more instead of trying to force a throw. Or sometimes the smartest play is you just got to throw it away. Just, take the L on that play and live to fight another down. So that's what I'm kind of curious to see from Brock this year is if he can avoid those trying to do too much mistakes and avoid those interceptions that come about as a result of it.
But that's another part of this that I find interesting about Purdy is he's someone that I think most people define as physically limited. And a lot of it is just how he looks, like his appearance, right?
It's like, like a guy.
Yeah, he's 6 feet tall. He's clean cut, smaller.
Doesn't have the
biggest arm.
Yeah,
is not the fastest, but he's quick. There's a lot of things that I think are, physically underwhelming about him. But I don't think we've found and discovered Brock Purdy's limitations yet, like the full extent of his limitation. I don't think we know what he can and can't do yet.
No. Yeah.
I think we've seen him just surprise a lot of people. I think we've seen him jump off the page in certain categories, but I don't think we know what his ceiling is yet.
No, and I think that's what's going to make this season so much fun is I think we're going to start seeing that ceiling come into view a little bit more. Because again, this is, like we said, this is his first real off season. Last year, he was recovering and rehabbing from most of his off season. When training camp opened up last year, there was still some doubt as to who the starting quarterback was going to be. There was still some thought, is it going to be Trey? Oh God, could Sam Darnold, the great thrower of the football that he is, could he sneak in and steal that starting spot? Now, obviously, all those concerns ended up, being for naught because Brock absolutely seized that starting spot and, made us look silly forever wondering if it was ever in doubt. This year, though, it's all him. And I think with just having to not have to focus on holding on to his quarterbacks, holding on to his starting spot, doesn't have to think about a Tom Brady showing up, doesn't need to think about a Sam Darnold, usurping him for that starting spot, allowing him to just focus on purely getting better for this season. That is why I think just being able to focus on only football is going to have Brock in such a better mindset going into this year that allows him to, I think, hopefully hit the ground running, push aside these mistakes. If you're going to throw interceptions, do it in a training camp. Get them all out of your system right now. Let's get into the regular season, start seeing how he looks, because, again, it's just once Brandon Aiyuk, I think, suits up, which I feel confident that they'll get this thing worked out before week 1. It's just with the amount of space he's going to be able to throw to guys with Aiyuk, with Debo, if Ricky Pearsall gets in that mix, George Kittle, that's before you even consider the Christian McCaffrey effect. It's set up so well for Brock to utilize his talents in a way that would build on what he did last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Brock too, look, there's a lot that we have to learn about him. I think also as a person, I think he's been pretty forthright, but one thing that I've always been, I don't know, I guess not concerned, but just kind of inquisitive about is that in college, he was a very aggressive quarterback. Like, he wasn't the guy that was turning it over only 2.5% of the time. He wasn't afraid to let it rip. He wasn't afraid to get aggressive. And I think some of that is because of his surroundings at Iowa State. He didn't play with as much talent as some of the other Big 12 schools and especially some of the SEC schools. So he had to be the guy. He doesn't have to necessarily, he hasn't had to the first year and a half of being a starter for the Niners be the dude that is, the nail that drives the game. He just kind of has to do what he needs to do, basically play his role. And his role is to orchestrate this offense, and he has done it at a level that is higher than any quarterback that I have seen in the Kyle Shanahan system, and maybe any other quarterback that Kyle Shanahan has had under him outside of one season of Matt Ryan. So Brock Purdy, why I think that the interceptions matter to me, not in a bad way, but he's trying to figure out what he can and can't do. And he's trying to, I guess, kind of recalibrate his own limitations. What he's able to do physically, how he's able to try and fit a ball into a window, if he can trust a receiver or not. These are all things he has to figure out. And it's basically just taking data every single day during training camp of what he's limited in, what he's able to do, what he might not be able to, go into his bag to go get. But I think in college, he had to be so aggressive all the time that got him into trouble. Both the Niners, I think we're going to figure out this season whether or not he has to revert back to being the aggressive guy, because if he plays it safe, I think the Niners are going to be successful. And if he, basically just kind of does as the offense demands him to do, he's going to be fine. They're going to win a lot of games. But is the next step for Brock Purdy, being the dude that's not afraid to throw picks and is not afraid to turn over the football, because oftentimes that can be the difference between a win and a loss in a big game.
Yeah, I think part of the next big step for Brock Purdy is you have to kind of rein in that aggression, so to speak. I mean, you love to see that aggression, but you got to kind of pick and choose your spots a little bit too, right? Like, you could be sometimes you need to be aggressive. Sometimes, though, it is, smarter to kind of take that lesser play. And right now, he's in a situation where I don't think he really even needs to be that aggressive because he's got so many weapons around him. That aggression, like, it might need to come along, starting next year when you start seeing, guys on this offense maybe start to leave. Maybe it is because you trade Debo. Maybe it is because George Kittle just starts to regress with age. There will come a time when Brock Purdy's going to have to be that aggressive guy. We always kind of go back to this comp of him and Tom Brady because they were both drafted so late. But even with Brady, those first few years, I don't know what point in Brady's career he kind of became, the guy who was the center point of that offense versus just the quarterback that was leading a talented team with a great defense. I mean,
I think Brady led the league in touchdowns like his second or third season as starter.
Okay, so I mean, maybe that's why I don't like to use the Tom Brady comp. But like, there's going to come a time when Brock's going to have to step up and be that aggressive guy and carry this load in a way that he doesn't have to right now. But that's the thing, he doesn't have to right now. And if I'm Brock Purdy, that's what I focus on. Is focus on the fact that you have guys around you that make it so you don't have to do too much or try or over push things, because that's how you get into these situations where you're making mistakes and throwing interceptions.
No, but I also want my quarterback to be the driving force. Like that's what I need for my quarterback, and I think that's what the Niners have not had, which is probably the reason why they don't yet hoist a Lombardi trophy. It's because the quarterback has always been a piece,
not the center,
not the piece. Yeah. And Brock Purdy, I think, is the first quarterback that I feel confident enough in to be the piece.
I agree with that.
Kyle Shanahan. So I do kind of need him to be a little bit different this upcoming season.
Well, yeah, I mean, but different in I guess it kind of defines, I guess it depends on just how you define that aggression there. Like, I want him to be different in that I would like to see him, just feel. Here's about this. What I would like to see for Brock to take that next step is I want him to reach that point where Kyle Shanahan's like, you know what? If you're going to change things up a little bit at the line of scrimmage, you do that. I think that's it. Like, I know you said on with TK, like that's his goal this year. He wants to be able to get to that point. Whether he does get there or not, that's going to be for Kyle Shanahan to decide. But you're talking about what the next step looks like of taking control of this offensive system. I feel like it's when you can have those keys to the car, so to speak, at the line of scrimmage. That's the next level for him. And maybe that kind of enables him to unlock that next ability to be more aggressive while also limiting mistakes and kind of get that best of both worlds situation going there.
No doubt. Let's get our final call into the show here. Gene's out in Oakland, wants to talk about Brock Purdy.
Uncle Gene.
How's it going?
Hey, very well, guys. So, look, I want to follow up on what you said about being more aggressive at key points, because when I went back and looked at the tape of the Super Bowl, the one thing I noticed with Purdy is that he played it safe, certainly much more than he had during the season. And I think in part I would attribute that to the fact that this was his first Super Bowl. I saw at least 2 or 3 times when he had Aiyuk open for a deep ball and he chose to throw the shorter pass. I would fully expect that next time he gets to the Super Bowl, and I expect he will, and I expect it'll be this year, with no problems health-wise or anything else, that he will be more aggressive and he will be more successful as a result.
Right on. Thanks, Gene. I agree.
I think maybe the term here as we get out of here is I want him to be selectively aggressive. Sometimes you kind of have to force a little bit more, but it's learning how to pick and choose your spots here. You don't need to be the hero every time when you got basically the Avengers around you. Like Tony Stark doesn't need to save the day every time. Let Thor, let Hawkeye, let Hulk. They can carry some of the load too.
Hawkeye.
Maybe maybe let Thor and Hulk kind of.
Yeah, no, sorry. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think. Yeah,
Hawkeye had his moments.
You do have the Avengers, but some guys got to lead. Well,
that's what Tony Stark is, and Tony Stark is Brock Purdy in this situation.
Yeah,
or is he Captain America? You want to make him Captain America instead?
Yeah, probably. I don't know. I mean, look, that's the thing. We're going to find out a lot about Brock Purdy. I don't know about which Avenger he is, but who he is as a quarterback this upcoming season, that's what I'm looking forward to. Also looking forward to seeing if the Giants can continue to roll tonight, Sam. So
it'll be nice. Let's get more of a winning streak together.
I think so.
Nice to see the A's keep rolling tonight, too. Keep taking it to the Dodgers. Overrated choke.
The only thing I really care about at this point is my bet with a few friends that the A's will not lose 100 games again this season, which now is looking pretty good.
You're sitting pretty there. Yeah.
Well, we're doing a bit better. It was looking not too great for a while, but the fact that they also stood pat weirdly at the deadline, they didn't sell any of their top pieces.
They moved Lucas Orseg, which...
Yeah, I mean, he was a setup guy, and he was hurt for quite a bit of the season. We don't need to dive too much into the A's. They also got a top 5 prospect from the Royals, which is kind of cool.
Oh, there you go.
But yeah, no, I'll be out there tonight. Looking forward to seeing Shohei again.
Yeah, beat LA, man. Love to see it.
We'll see if Ohtani hits another ball 120 miles an hour.
Then have Brent Rooker show him up.
Yeah, exactly. Rooker, Shea, Lawbutt didn't do much last night.
You can't do it every night.
Not every night, just against the Giants. and we'll see if Kyle Harrison's got something in Cincinnati. But it's been a fun show, man. I appreciate it.
This has been good.
Right on. So for Sam Lubman, Ken Luttrell, my name is Evan Giddings saying so long here on Saturdays on 95.7 The Game. We'll be back here, same place, same time next week from 9 to noon every single weekend right here. Appreciate everybody in our YouTube chat, along on Twitch, powered by First North Cal Credit Union. Thanks to everybody who's called in today, everybody that's texted in on the Xfinity mobile text line. We say so long. And sorry, what, Ken? Oh, yeah. Thank you to Dave Fleming, who joined us on the River Islands guest line as well. He's on the call at 4:15 on NBC Sports Bay Area for the San Francisco Giants. So thank you to Dave Fleming, who joined us as well. Fantastic interview you can check out on Odyssey. And that'll do it. So everybody enjoy your weekend and take it easy.